Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willem clan of the Boonwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. Hi everyone. While councillors are meeting tonight at the St Kilda Town Hall, officers and members of the community will be participating via the WebEx platform. This meeting is being streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Whilst we have planned for this online meeting, like last week, there always remains the risk of technical issues arising that are beyond our control. So if we do experience technical difficulties tonight, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue or take it as it comes. The meeting processes have been altered via resolution of Council to hear all submissions from members of the public at the start of the meeting. And in line with regulations outlined by the state government, which states all Victorians must wear a fitted face mask when they leave home, councillors are expected to abide by the law and wear a face mask when they enter the chamber and sit here. So when they are addressing the meeting, the exception is, in line with the broadcast rule of the regulations, they can remove their mask and then refit it once they have completed speaking. So firstly, apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies? Having no apologies for the night, we'll move on to minutes. Item number 2, minutes of the previous meetings. So councillors, the minutes of the meeting of the 18th of November 2020 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Moved by Councillor Copsey and seconded by Councillor Baxter. Did you want to speak to the motion at all? Councillor Baxter, did you want to know? Did any other councillor want to speak to the minutes? All right, I will put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? Councillor Clark.
Yes, in regard to the waste. In regard to the motion around the extension of the contracts for the waste.
Great. Your microphone is very low, but we take that. Councillor Pearl, did you want to...
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Marcus Pearl have a interest, not a conflict of interest, an interest that I'll declare in item 7.4.
Yeah. Thank you. So pursuant to Council's governance rules, a condolence motion has been added to tonight's agenda. And this condolence motion is for Desmond or Des Clark. So Des Clark was appointed Chief Commissioner on the establishment of the City of Port Phillip in 1994 and sadly passed away on the 15th of November. The role of the commissioners at Port Phillip was to manage the merger of the 3 former councils, St Kilda, South Melbourne and Port Melbourne, into a new city of Port Phillip. Prior to his appointment at Port Phillip, Des had been a councillor and Lord Mayor at the City of Melbourne. On finishing his term as Chief Commissioner in 1996, Des left Port Phillip in a strong, sustainable financial position with services integrated across the 3 former councils and a new council well prepared for the return of elected councillors. Particular achievements of Des's term as Chief Commissioner included representing the local community in negotiations with the state government over the redevelopment of Albert Park, negotiating a partnership with the state government to establish the Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre, the rejuvenation of the residential community in Port Melbourne, and the creation of a home for the National Academy of Music in the South Melbourne Town Hall. Following his period at Port Phillip, Des went on to be chair of the Commonwealth Film and Literature Classification Board. Council would like to express its sincere condolences to Mr Clark's family. Mr Clark's legacy will continue to live on through the City of Port Phillip he helped to create, and he will be sadly missed. Councillors, I seek someone to move the motion that Council expresses its deep regret on the passing of Desmond Clark, to offer its sincere condolences to his family, and places on record its appreciation for his service to the City of Port Phillip. Do I have a mover? Councillor Pearl and Councillor Bond. Councillor Pearl, did you want to speak to the condolence motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We as councillors are here because of the people who were here before us, and albeit this was a short period of time of administration, I'll use the word, I'm not sure if that's the right word, that the council was in, but the people that were commissioners at that time, we owe a dear debt of gratitude to, and they don't perhaps get the recognition that they should have, as they weren't elected officials, but effectively they were providing a huge public service and ensuring that there was an appropriate conduit between the community, the council and the state government. But these people also had to go through some of the biggest organisational change facets that this council ever undertook. So on behalf of the City of Port Phillip, it's my great pleasure to move this motion, but I know I speak for all councillors when I say that we owe a debt of gratitude to all previous councillors, but particularly those handful of commissioners that worked so tirelessly to build the City of Port Phillip from the ground up.
Councillor Bond, did you want to say anything? Did any other councillor want to speak to the motion? As there are no more speakers, I will now put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We'll move on now to Section 4, or Item 4, Public Question Time and Submissions. So as I mentioned before, we will now hear all of the public questions and comments on report items from members of the public. So all the requests to speak this evening were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. At the time of registering to speak, submitters were given the option to join via the WebEx platform virtually and ask their questions live during the meeting, or to have an officer read their statement on their behalf. Statements submitted by members of the public will be read in summary by an officer. So, now I will say to all the speakers tonight, we do have a lot of people to hear from, which is wonderful, but I will ask you to keep your statements or questions to 2 minutes. Otherwise, we're going to be here till probably midnight anyway. So the CEO will be timing you, and I will be pretty fierce on calling the 2-minute time. So I ask you to be as succinct as you can. And so the first speaker to call is John Sutherland, who is speaking to item 7.4, which is the petition response request to investigate alternative options to make the Kerferd Road Crossover at Herbert Street safer. Quite a title. John, I will ask you to speak loudly for us in the chambers, and please state your name and suburb and then get underway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just checking you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Right, my name is John Sutherland and my suburb is Albert Park. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your time. Councillors, I hope tonight that when an important decision needs to be made about an undeniable safety issue in our community, that safety has your vote. That is what this debate is, safety versus inconvenience. As a father of 3 young children who lives in Herbert Street, just metres from this intersection, I tremor each time I leave the house. Cars crossing the Kerferd Road medium, mostly rat runners, fly into Herbert Street at breakneck speed to beat the oncoming southbound traffic. As a cyclist, it is frightening to ride north or south on Kerferd Road with motorists seemingly in a constant state of confusion at the Herbert Street intersection and not even aware a bike lane exists. As a pedestrian, it is just not safe. Motorists have too many decisions to make. Other cars, blind spots, cyclists, who gives way? Families on foot are not even considered. We, the council and the community, have been aware of this problem for many years and we have all been seeking a solution. The safety of the intersection has even made national news via a Herald Sun story on October the 12th. In summary, the council's responsibility to implement a solution is supported by the community. Driven by safety and urgently required, the expert independent safety audit has provided the recommendation. The Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning will contribute the funds, and the trial will ensure that we fairly find the right outcome. Let's not regret inaction any longer and the unthinkable consequences that may cause. I applaud the officer recommendations on this topic for a second time. And Council, thank you for your support in search of a safe solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I now call upon Craig Wright, who is also speaking to the same petition response, item 7.4. Craig, if you could announce your name and suburb and then make your statement.
Yes, thank you. My name is Craig Wright. I live at Albert Park. I'd like to thank everybody at the Port Phillip Council and my fellow neighbours for allowing me to address you this evening on what is really an important safety issue for our community. Unlike many of you this evening, I've only been part of the community for 12 months. I was fortunate to buy a house on the corner of Kerferd Road and Herbert Street. But like many of you, due to COVID, I've been working at home during this period, and I've had to make my bedroom and my family room into a makeshift office. And both of these look directly out onto the intersection, which is the subject of this consultation. I've been in a unique position over the last 8 months to observe, as a driver, a pedestrian, and from my makeshift offices, some incredibly dangerous road behaviour taking place at this intersection. I've also witnessed 2 separate car crashes and a cyclist being hit by a car at this intersection, despite reading in some of the material that there'd been no crashes recorded here in the last 5 years. I've provided photos to fellow neighbours as evidence of this. From my observations, the intersection is mired by delivery vans and work vehicles using Herbert Street as a rat run and often crossing Kerferd Road at dangerous speeds. Obstructed visibility due to the flame trees that are planted along the traffic island, and just mere confusion among motorists who are entering and exiting Herbert Street from the intersection with no coherent signage to direct them or understanding of how to use that intersection. Through this consultation process, we have an opportunity to make our community safer. I agree with the latest officer recommendations and the measures proposed, and I applaud the officers for recommending safety ahead of convenience. As community members, we must put the safety of others ahead of our personal convenience. Without action here today, one day there will be a serious accident at this intersection. Someone will be critically injured or die. And how will we feel living with the knowledge that we had an opportunity to present it, but we didn't because it was too inconvenient? Please, let's all get behind this.
Right on 2 minutes. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. The next speaker, I call upon Norbert Oberholzner to speak to the same item, petition 7.4. If you could state your name and suburb and then make your statement, please.
Yes, good evening, dear Mayor and Councillors. My name is Norbert Oberholzner and I live in Albert Park. My question refers to the attempt to close the median crossover on Kerferd Road between Montague and Herbert Street. Council is intending to proceed with this closure using the latest road safety audit as its single focus. All councillors will have received communication on this matter from myself and other concerned local residents. I have read through in detail the road safety audit and find that its recommendation and conclusion is flawed. I hope that you have read all the audit, as I will now break it down for you and show you how flawed and biased it is. Section 2, scope of audit. The first paragraph incorrectly refers to Kerferd Road as Herbert Street, shows the quality of the audit. Paragraph 4, data shows the cars are not using Herbert Street as a rat run. This nullifies the first petition that the council is so intent on upholding and using in discrediting the second petition. Paragraph 5 refers to bicycle count on Kerferd Road, only specifying morning hours. This does not mean that all pass through the said intersection. Paragraph 6 does not date crash data, only specifying 10 years, whereas the Vic Road's crash history and in Council's own writing states no recorded crashes at this intersection in the most recent 5-year period up to December 2019. Section 3, overarching comments. Paragraph 3 and 4 refer to the historical failure to give way and its inherited level of risk. It would be more appropriate to install proper signage than close the intersection. Final sentence, paragraph 4, is inappropriate in this case as this is a low-density housing area, so traffic volumes should minimally increase, therefore inappropriate excuse and reasoning. Paragraph 5 states the Montague-Herbert streets are local streets and do not provide a major strategic traffic function. The traffic volume data substantiates this. This should mean that the crossover remains open for local residents' access to amenities. Of the 8 options suggested, the first and most severe is planned. Many of the scenarios suggest improvements to signage, line marking, curb extension and ramps. These are more in line with low local traffic volumes, which will still enable access to local amenities. Point 1, closing the...
So you're coming to the end of your 2 minutes. Could you wrap it up, please?
Well, I'm only halfway through.
I know, but everyone's only getting 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, yep. We've received lots of you've received lots of data. I do believe that this particular audit does not point the right way. It's only pointing at other places, even using roundabouts at the 2 Dutch-style roundabouts on Moray Street and Kerferd Road would be an ideal solution that would give traffic users correct access to the intersection via approved safety signage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. This time I call upon David Gallicchio. I apologise if the pronunciation's off. Also speaking to 7.4, the petition regarding the crossover at Herbert Road. Could you please state your name and suburb and then make your statement, sir?
Thank you. David Gallicchio from Albert Park. Thank you for your time, councillors, this evening and allowing me to speak on this agenda item. I'm a City of Port Phillip ratepayer and I live in Dank Street. Previously, I've lived in Park Street. I've been a regular visitor to Young Street and Herbert Street and surrounds and have therefore used this intersection on many occasions. My observations of this intersection are that it is full of blind spots due to trees which should remain, other vehicles during busy and even non-busy periods, which create significant blind spots for motorists. It is extremely dangerous to other vehicles and cyclists due to these blind spots, and it is at a significant risk of a crash as vehicles try to beat other vehicles and don't see cyclists in the bike lane, pedestrians or obstacles on Herbert Street after making the crossing. Reading through the safety audit that has been conducted, I would wholeheartedly agree with the view that the intersection is unsafe. Particularly during rush hour times, it is a complete crapshoot for those driving south on Kerferd Road without them even knowing it, and those crossing from Montague Street or Herbert Street. As someone who is a user of the intersection, would it be a slight inconvenience if it was to close? Maybe. But I would also note that there are multiple east-west crossings on Kerferd Road that could be utilised instead and would only add a very small period of time to someone's journey. I use Kerferd Road multiple times per week and sometimes per day, and it is a stretch of road that all residents should want to be safe, even if it inconveniences a small minority. This issue is a known one, and I would hope that it does not take a serious accident for change to occur. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, sir. I now call upon Chris Wallace, also speaking to 7.4, the petition response. Chris, could you please state your name and suburb and get...
Good evening, councillors. My name is Chris Wallace. I have resided in Herbert Street, Melbourne Park for 9 years. For 6 long years, COP has wrestled with the problems caused by motorists along the Herbert Street, Montague Street route, a route which provides significant time savings over the Ferrar Street, Canterbury Road alternative with its 5 sets of traffic lights. There are 2 groups of motorists using the Montague Street, Herbert Street route. The first group consists of those whose journey starts or finishes at an address along the route. The second group consists of those who elect to use the Montague Street, Herbert Street route because it is quicker and it saves them time. It is this second group which has turned the route into a rat run. The rat runners are important people in a hurry, and God help anyone who slows them down. The rat runners routinely ignore the road rules. They bully pedestrians using the Galilee Primary School crossing when there is no supervisor on duty. They ignore stopped trams and alighting and disembarking passengers outside Cravens. They bully pedestrians at the Bridport Street crossing and then at the Library crossing. And they bully cyclists through the traffic calming chicanes. At the intersection with Kerferd Road, the impatience of rat runners causes more problems. Some 29 recorded accidents over the last 5 years. Nearby residents have seen many more, as you've just heard. Once rat runners clear the intersection with Kerferd Road, they face the home straight and accelerate hard into Herbert Street and maintain that speed. Along the entire route, residents are abused when they slow to park their cars. The counter-petitioners state, we share the safety concerns about this intersection. The counter-petitioners then disclose their real objective, an attack on COP officers We are equally concerned by the way the City of Port Phillip approached this matter. There was a community meeting some years ago to deal with this issue, attended by council. The safety of local residents cannot be resolved by a popularity contest when the 258 signatories did not identify where they are from, and when not a single one of them could be identified as being a resident along Montague Street or Herbert Street when the petition was on display. COP officers have studied the issues and commissioned an independent expert who, although he reached his conclusions on the basis of reduced traffic volumes during the COVID lockdown, still concluded the problems are best addressed by a trial closure of the Kerferd Road intersection. I ask the councillors to support that trial closure, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr Wallace. I now call upon Andrew Perkins, who is also speaking to the most popular item tonight, 7.4 Petition Response. If you could state your name, sir, and your suburb, and then make your 2-minute statement, please.
Andrew Perkins, Albert Park, resident, ratepayer of 32 years, much longer than anyone else that's spoken so far, and lived in proximity of this crossover for the last 24 years. So there've been some very clever comments and emotional comments about this crossover. Basically, when talking to John Battels, the traffic officer, it's a fact that it has never been a black spot on the list of the council's black spots. They were not interested. They had no interest in this black spot until the self-serving petition of 26 and the Herbert district put it in. To discredit the fact that 258 people have said don't close it, it borders on the ridiculous. A lot more people are concerned about the closure. If it's not dangerous, then it's not necessary to close it. When cars meet at all places, there are some level of danger. The skill for council is to decide how to manage that. This intersection, we all agree, can be improved. But if were to be closed, then that would increase the movements. It's basically local traffic. It's not rat runners. The expert opinion said it was local traffic. So an estimation that it would be an increase of 400 kilometres per day of travel, 2,800 kilometres a week, or 145,600 kilometres per year of extra travel and local and greenhouse gases. I can't imagine. Furthermore, this would also increase the risk because the traffic being local would just transfer itself a kilometre, 500 metres down the road, and the cars that are coming at that intersection are going much faster. So if this was to be closed, the council would be increasing the risk of the area, and secondly, creating enormous greenhouse gases, all for an intersection where cars meet, and all cars meet, there are some level of risk, but it just needs to be redesigned and it would be fine. So
if you could come to the end of your statement, please.
Okay, so they need to rate all of the intersections on Kerferd Road, and this would be the least dangerous. The rest of it is self-serving for the people on and around Herbert Street.
Thank you, sir. I now call upon Bruce Howlett, speaking to item 0.75, a different petition response, request to annul the decision to approve planning application 875/2019. Mr Howlett, could you state your name and suburb and make your statement, please?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Bruce Howlett, St Kilda. I own an apartment on Chapel Street. I'm talking to item 7.5 because I'm just sort of curious as to how the determination to approve the application 875 of 2019 was reached. In outlining how the determinant of the application was reached, the agenda item states that council officers undertook a comprehensive assessment of the proposal to develop basically a pub in accordance with the requirements of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the Port Phillip Planning Scheme, including the consideration of all objections and relevant policies. The determination just doesn't seem consistent with the significant heritage of the area as indicated in the City of Port Phillip Heritage Policy, Map 6 and 7, nor with the intended use of the area of the civic and community precinct as outlined in section 4.3.2 of the strategic directions of the Carlisle Street Activity Centre, Structure Plan 2009. It's also not consistent with precinct policies outlined for Precinct 6 of the Activity Centre Policy 2012, which specifically has the intent to discourage licensed premises, as in bars, taverns, restaurants and nightclubs. I just don't believe the points have been fully considered before the application was approved. And on that basis, I think there's a case for the council to review the application, revisiting particular aspects of the council policy and planning. And that's me done in hopefully a lot less than my 2 minutes. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hallett. That was very great. You were totally under the 2-minute time limit. Now I call upon Sergei I apologise, sir. Yanegvich, if you could say it for me, I'll learn. And you're also speaking to 7.5 Petition Response to annul the decision. If you could,
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you could state your name and suburb, please.
Yeah. My name is Sergei Yuknevich, and I'm living in St. Kilda.
If you could make your statement then, sir, please.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention once again about application 875-19, which was seeking an approval for partial demolitions of the building, which was classified as a significant heritage place, and it was heritage gazetted by the council. Then the applications also was seeking establishing a pub in the area which was reserved as a civic and community service hub. These matters are far from routine, and the board warranted some council deliberation. However, it wasn't done, and its matters was made by delegations to the officer, was directed by delegation to the officer. Since March 2020, all Melbourne restaurants and pubs and many administrative offices were closed, and all residents were locked down due to the COVID pandemic. And during this time, the applications to open the pub was carried to an approval. An officer approved the application, ignoring all previous plans for the area, heritage constraints, establish requirements for essential reports. The reports for the traffic and parking analysis report wasn't completed. The economic impact assessment wasn't completed. Proximity to a primary school wasn't considered. Proximity to the church and general residential area 1 wasn't considered. Furthermore, instead of seeking consultations with the Minister for Environment and Department of Education under the Section 55 of Planning Environment Act, the delegated officer provided authorities with the advertising material under Section 52 of the same Act. Therefore, I think the Council would be rightly to consider following option. The councillors may elect to seek internal or external review, examining the council's officer had used delegated authority beyond the scope of instrument of delegation. The council can seek cancellations or amendment to a notice which they issued due to improper consultations with the referring authority, such as Minister for Environment and Department of Education. The council also can seek cancellation or amendment to the notice due to procedural defects in the planning scheme. The council can seek intervention by the Minister for Planning, utilizing Minister calling powers.
So that's the end of your 2 minutes. Could you wrap it up, please?
I'm done.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I now call upon Kate Hillier, who is speaking to 7.5, the petition response to annul this planning decision as referenced. Kate, would you please state your name and suburb and then make your statement?
Thank you. My name's actually Kay Hillier. I live in St Kilda, directly opposite where the planning application relates to. My concern is that delegation of this decision resulted in a decision that is inconsistent with reinforcing the role and the identity of the precinct as a civic and community services hub, a focus for governance, civic activity spaces and service delivery to local and wider communities. I'm confused as to why the council prepares planning schemes and then allow these schemes to be ignored. As a ratepayer, I purchased my home or my property based on the intended use of land as per the planning scheme, so I'm somewhat perplexed about the decision. I also wonder why we have elected representatives if they are not involved in decision making. I'm concerned that currently car parking is difficult in this area. It would appear that the decision to forego normal parking requirements for a new business for this area hasn't been considered, particularly the difficulties currently imposed on residents, particularly when returning home after dark. It's often very difficult if there's any functions on around this area. And as a more senior citizen, I really don't like having to park blocks away and wander the streets late at night. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. We are moving on to another speaker. I'd like to call upon Kirsty Hillhouse, who is speaking to item 14.1 financial update, the first quarter 2020 to 2021 financial review, which includes Live, Love, Local funding and budget rate capping consideration. Kirsty, if you could state your name and suburb and then speak to the item.
Hi, my name's Kirsty Hillhouse from St Kilda, and I'm speaking to the Arts Rescue and Recovery Grant specifically. Independent artists create conversations. They unearth stories and perspectives from across the breadth of the community, sharing ideas that enrich understanding, openness and innovation. They bring people together, creating social cohesion and public healing. And there's never been a time when the performing arts were more needed, and there's never been a time when the sector has been so decimated. People are struggling with the upheaval of the pandemic and the impact and stress of long-term isolation, but no group has been more impacted than the independent theatre sector. While large organisations draw on their lobbying power to achieve significant stimulus packages, the independent sector struggles to find support. This disparate, fragile and high-risk sector is the crucial research and development arm of the industry, nurturing the next generation of artists. Organisations such as TheatreWorks provide a much-needed creative hub. From within their little home in St Kilda, they generate national recognition for their work. And Council plays a vital role in the survival of independent artists and the organisations that support them, as we see a continuing trend towards the support for flagship companies at the expense of the independent and emerging sector. The sector's close to collapse. Within the first 2 weeks of COVID lockdown, over 450 artists lost their employment at TheatreWorks alone, only to discover they're ineligible for JobKeeper. Artists are in free fall, and organisations like TheatreWorks, who support hundreds of artists annually, find themselves without income and without stimulus support. I cannot emphasise strongly enough the critical condition of the industry at the moment. Right when the community needs to be coming together to share stories and heal, the very institutions able to deliver that are in crisis. For over 40 years, TheatreWorks been an icon in the Australian cultural landscape, but they're also deeply embedded in their local neighbourhood, enriching the lives of locals and promoting the reputation of the city of Port Phillip as an innovative arts hub and a dynamic, exciting destination to visit. This activates local businesses, animates our streets, and creates a sense of excitement and vibrancy, but this will all fade to nothing if the industry cannot be resuscitated. Unfortunately, the avenues for this support are being exhausted, leaving local council as one of the most crucial and vital to ensuring this sector survives. Look, we're all tired, we're exhausted, but we have the talent, the stamina and the ability to weaponise optimism with dynamic creative works which will reignite the city and bring not only TheatreWorks and the independent artists but the local community back to life. But we need your help, and we really need it now. And I encourage you to support further arts rescue grants and one-off recovery grants for key arts orgs as a matter of urgency. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Now, upon Brenda Forbath, who is also speaking to item 14.1.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors.
Could you state your name and suburb, please?
Yes, Brenda Forbath, Elwood, and I'm also a member of the Community Alliance of Port Phillip. And the previous speaker spoke incredibly eloquently and probably captured all of the key points that I would be wishing to make. But I want to speak in strong support of item 14.1 financial update, in particular recommendations 3.5.8, 3.5.9, 3.5.10 and 3.5.11. All of those 4 proposals are so important for our arts community at this crucial time, as the previous speaker indicated. The COVID pandemic has had a devastating impact on arts workers, most of whom work on a short-term, casual basis and have not been eligible for federal government support, such as JobKeeper. A great many of these workers live in the city of Port Phillip, and Port Phillip has been a haven for artists of all kinds over many, many decades, and they are really struggling, and we should be doing all we can to try and facilitate work opportunities in the arts industry in the city of Port Phillip, which will... the other point I'd like to make is that many venues have been closed for most of this year and are only now being reopened and often in somewhat limited way, which is a further problem for people working in this industry. The support for these industries and for these workers will help to breathe life back into our community, and it will provide a really major stimulus to our local economy. It will provide enjoyment for locals, as well as luring people back into our community and to visit our many arts venues, and I believe it's money very well spent. So I urge everyone to support these recommendations. I also just wish to add that I also support the additional proposals that the officers have made as a further additional consideration at 14.17.2 and 14.14.3. These are 2 other arts initiatives which I think should also be considered by Council. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to call upon Michelle Nicol, speaking to the same item 14.1. Ms Nicol, if you could state your name and suburb, please.
Hello, and my name is Michelle Nicol and my suburb is St Kilda. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. It's always great to be able to do that. I'm speaking tonight as a City of Port Phillip ratepayer and on behalf of the St Kilda Live Music Community Committee as its Vice President. The St Kilda Live Music Community is a not-for-profit organisation whose role in the community is to support the creation, performance and economic development of live music within the City of Port Phillip for artists, art workers, venue and audiences alike. Tonight I'm speaking in support of the recommendations made particularly in point 3.5 to ensure that the City of Port Phillip maintains its long-held reputation and brand equity in being an arts and music hub of Melbourne. Each of the recommendations that have been made there by the officers is supported by the St Kilda Live Music community because we believe that a considered and thoughtful approach has been taken to the full range of arts and culture in the city. Our live music community represents hundreds and hundreds of musicians, attendees, live music fans, sound engineers, backroom workers. There are thousands of us in the City of Port Phillip. And I think it is well known now, and I really hope that it's well known now to Council, that the economic, social and health benefits of a thriving arts, culture and creative sector are beneficial to government, to residents, to practitioners and to our economy. Creative industries play a huge part in our economy, and there's a range of non-economic benefits that also flow from the industry, including mental and physical health and wellbeing, social cohesion, community spirit, a sense of identity, a sense of pride and joy in everyday living in the place we call home. As other speakers have pointed out, clearly the COVID pandemic has posed an almost existential threat to the creative industries, who, along with the tourism industry, were the first to fall off the economic cliff due to the pandemic. The hospitality industry was only a heartbeat behind these. And all three of these industries have a codependency within our city, leveraging each other to provide locals and visitors with a unique and compelling experience within the city. As a result, there'll be a long road to recovery for all of these industries. Creative industries in particular. Am I running close?
Yes, you are running close. Can you see my facial expression? Yes, if you could bring it to a close, please, Michelle.
Okay, so we've already talked about the fact that arts workers didn't actually qualify for federal government support. Council support of this sector of the community contributes to the other industries within Port Phillip. It's the creative sector that provides the added layers of appeal to our venues and businesses within the city to provide a point of distinction and excitement and vitality and supports those businesses. Without the creative industries, we're just another suburb with parklands and a view. That's it. I hope that you will support all the recommendations here, councillors.
Thank you, Ms Nicol. I call upon Deb Stewart, speaking to the same item, 14.1. If you could state your name and suburb and then make your statement, please.
Deb Stewart from Elwood. Thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to speak to you. In relation to the same issue, supporting the arts and music industry through these initiatives in this recommendation. I have lived in the city of Port Phillip for over 25 years and have immersed myself in my community. For example, I'm Secretary of the Port Phillip Citizens for Reconciliation. I've had the privilege to participate in the many and diverse artistic and cultural activities that Port Phillip has historically always offered. I have friends who are wonderful musicians who have suffered greatly during COVID. So they have not had the support of JobKeeper or JobSeeker because of the casualised nature of their work. They have been creative by running Zoom gigs, raising money for Beyond Blue and Support Act, but little for themselves. What they are really looking forward to is getting back on that stage and to perform in Port Phillip. We need to support the arts and music in our community, the many artists, musicians, actors, dancers, performers and associated organisations. Port Phillip has a rich, long history and reputation of being a vibrant, diverse hub for the arts and music of many genres. That is why I live here. That is why a large proportion of COP residents reside here. I would hate that to change. The federal government promised $250 million to support for the arts, but this money is yet to be received by anyone. Unfortunately, and most probably, it will never reach local artists and associated organisations. We've all experienced an exceptionally difficult COVID year. Recovery from this epidemic in Victoria has started, but it will be at a slow pace. Recovery at a local level will take much longer without the support of Port Phillip Council. The council can provide this support by passing the recommendation in its entirety, especially those items pertaining to the local arts and music industry. This will help provide many jobs to local artists and groups who have been struggling for months and months. Personally, I feel the council could contribute more than is detailed in the recommendation. What we are talking about here is supporting one of the most important industries in our city that is vital for the health and well-being of community members and general social and community cohesion. The arts is the heartbeat of our rich Port Phillip city. I urge the council to support this motion and in its consideration consider increasing the financial support outlined in the recommendation to a level that will have a far greater impact and help the city return more quickly to its colourful, vibrant and authentic self.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call upon Fiona Simons, speaking to the same item 14.1. If you could please state your name and suburb and then go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, Fiona has been unable to attend, so I'm happy to read a statement on her behalf.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Sure. and the statement reads, I am writing in support of the arts funding measures proposed for consideration at tonight's council meeting. Red Stitch Actors Theatre has been a proudly St Kilda-based organisation for the past 20 years, producing award-winning, nationally acclaimed contemporary theatre and developing new Australian stories through our INK Inc. playwriting program. Each year we engage over 100 artists and arts workers and provide cultural and entertainment opportunities to audiences of around 15,000 people. St Kilda's arts and cultural scene is nationally recognised, helps attract visitors to the region, boosts spending in the area, employs local creatives and lends vibrancy to the city of Port Phillip. For the past 2 decades, Red Stitch has been an integral part of that experience. Over the years, the financial support offered to our company by the City of Port Phillip has been invaluable, helping us to weather some difficult and uncertain times, such as federal arts funding cuts and the changing media environment. Never have times been more uncertain or the arts sector more been in need of support than right now. The live performance sector in particular has been very hard hit by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, with job losses, detrimental effects on mental health and ongoing economic and operational uncertainty. Many of our colleagues are freelance artists who have been unable to access federal government support through JobKeeper, and the loss of both income and creative outlets has been devastating. Local organisations are very unlikely to receive any of the $250 million arts rescue package, which is supposed to be rolled out by the federal government, and the next 2 years will be precarious for most small to medium arts organisations. As Melbourne slowly recovers from the impacts of COVID, we need relevant cultural experiences. We need to get out of our homes and back into theatres, galleries and restaurants. The arts are vital to mental health and social cohesion and will help our communities to recover financially, emotionally and socially. Our audiences are hungry to return to these cultural experiences. Your support will help to ensure they have something to return to. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I call upon Philippa Devine to speak to item 14.1. If you could state your name, your suburb and then away you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Philippa Devine, Albert Park. And my thanks to council officers for your continued work on considering how best to reallocate the 1.7 million funds from the St Kilda Festival, and to councillors who I hope will support recommendation 3.5, particularly 3.5.8 through 11, which reallocates back into arts, culture and our social recovery from the pandemic. We cannot rely on hope that Port Phillip will remain a creative, progressive and inclusive place in which to live, work and play on the other side of this pandemic. We must invest in the whole creative ecosystem of people and organisations that contribute to the rich fabric of life here. My connection to the effect of the pandemic on arts and cultural organisations and creatives in the city of Port Phillip is primarily through my role of, on the Gasworks Arts Board as Treasurer and more recently as Chair, and also in my capacity as a teacher at full-time tertiary level acting students. An arts student at St Kilda's National Theatre can have worked as a casual usher at Theatre Works, paid their rent by working in an Ackland Street local bar or retailer, aspired towards a graduate position at Red Stitch, spent almost every cent they earn locally, and collaborated with other professionals across the creative industries to make fringe shows, web series and outdoor performance pieces. Creators and traders' futures are intertwined, particularly in walkable neighbourhoods like those of the city of Port Phillip. Putting an extra $100,000 into the Arts Rescue Grant's operational budget to do or to go directly to local artists is a no-brainer. They are the prime organisers of community arts participation events, which will aid social recovery, like teaching, workshops, tours, etc. And it's also vital for traders who depend on their patronage and labour. I also implore you to approve the recovery grants that are proposed for the Australian Tapestry Workshop, the Torch, Red Stitch, Theatre Works, the Raucous Theatre Company and Philip Adams Ballet Lab. Arts organisations are all hanging in the balance in 2020 and 2021, and they contribute a lot with a little. Perhaps even more importantly, this is the ideal opportunity to centralise the importance of supporting local Indigenous artists. The Boonwurrung Language Project mural along the Jackala Boulevard embankment wall should tonight be moved from being an option to becoming a formally supported initiative with associated funding security. Finally, Council should consider providing outdoor event permit support for arts, cultural and music events in a similar way to how permit fee waivers are supporting hospitality traders. It's the same COVID-safe principle of moving indoor gatherings outdoors where possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call on Rhonda Small, speaking to item 14.1. If you could state your name, please, and suburb for the record, and then make your statement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Rhonda Small and I live in St Kilda. This is the first time I've spoken at Council since the election, so I'd just like to start by saying I'd like to welcome back to the returning councillors and give a special welcome to the new councillors. You've all put up your hands for a civic duty that's often an unappreciated one, and I think it's important that sometimes we're not just coming up to Council to criticise but to support. So I'm really pleased to be here tonight to speak in support of particularly the officer's recommendations around the arts funding, but also the funding that is being recommended to support our local traders. And the previous speakers have spoken so eloquently that I really don't feel I need to add much to that. So I'll just say a very few things. I know that some of you have stood on platforms of wanting to create greater efficiencies at Council and to reduce Council spending. Can I say to you that tonight is not a night to advance that kind of an agenda? I'm really urging you to be open-hearted in your response to the officer's recommendation to invest money into the arts and into support for our local traders. It's such an important thing in this recovery from the pandemic that this spending is seen as an investment in our community, and I trust that you will all see the recommendations in that light. As I said, the others have spoken incredibly eloquently and I won't repeat their arguments, but I will just say that I agree with all the recommendations that they've made in their talk with you, and I'd really urge you to support the officer's recommendations in full. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I now call upon John Turnbull, speaking to a different item, 14.3, which is the proposed tenancy agreement, the Port Melbourne Soccer Club completion of statutory procedures. If you could please state your name and suburb and then make your statement.
Yep, my name's John Turnbull and my suburb is Armadale. I'd like to thank the Gateway Ward councillors for meeting with members of the club committee this morning at JL Murphy to hear our concerns relating to the lease agreement that you're voting on tonight. For the benefit of all councillors, our concerns are as follows. Section 3.1, we're concerned at the short-term nature of the lease. With an end date of June 2023, the lease term is effectively just 2.5 years. This severely hinders the club's ability to seek private sector funding for facility upgrades and makes our strategic planning, including the establishment of our junior girls community pathway, extremely difficult to undertake, given what will be the ongoing uncertainty around our continued tenure beyond that date. Furthermore, the lease is due to end in the middle of the soccer season and right before the commencement of the 2023 Women's World Cup, for which the club is seeking to secure significant funding from the game's governing body to upgrade the pitches and pavilion. We urge councillors to work with the club to extend the proposed lease term to alleviate the aforementioned challenges and demonstrate that there is a genuine intention to continue to give soccer a home in Port Melbourne. Section 3.6, we have concerns at the proposed removal of fencing between pitches 2 and 3, and I ask that an alternative solution be found that achieves the desired outcome of increasing the perception of openness without negatively impacting our members' and fans' training and matchday experience. Section 4.5, we have concerns over having to find up to an additional $18,000 for ground maintenance on the main competition pitch following changes in the defined minimum service level. The club has already reduced the participation fees of our community teams, which includes a discount of more than 50% across the age groups from under 8 to under 13. This represents a drop in revenue of around $70,000 per annum, which we will already struggle to replace. The club is also committed to provide a number of free initiatives for the community, which I outlined at the last council meeting. This represents further significant investment, and should finances be further stretched by increased pitch maintenance costs, I fear our ability to deliver these initiatives would be at risk. We therefore ask that Council commit to working with the club to ensure that the minimum service level for pitch 1 stay at a level that provides a surface which meets MPL requirements without requiring the club to find significant extra funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have now received further 6 submissions to be read out on behalf of members of the public. So I'll call out the name of each member of the public and refer to the Coordinator of Governance to read a summary of the submissions. And a full copy of all these statements will be published on the Council's website tomorrow. So the first one that will be read out is Alessandro Trevin.
Through you, Mayor, the statement reads, my query goes to the capital construction rates paid by the Council and also the type of capital projects it undertakes. Does the Council think it gets fair value for ratepayers' money, and does the Council spend its money wisely on projects that are actually needed? I draw attention to 2 items. 1, the reconstruction of the intersect at Montague Street and Park Street in South Melbourne, which occurred in the first half of the 2020 calendar year A. This intersection was in perfect working order prior to the reconstruction, and the works was labelled a streetscape improvement. B, the project essentially involved 1, the raising of zebra crossings on the west and northern sides and repainting the crossings. 2, new plants at the northeast and southwest corners. 3, replacement of some curbing. And 4, a stormwater pit and associated rain garden. 2, replacement or resetting of perfectly good bluestone street gutters. I have noticed this occur on several occasions in the South Melbourne area over a few years. The streetscape improvement at the intersect at Montague Street and Park Street in South Melbourne was delivered at a cost of $250,000. The cost of materials used in the project would, at my guess, be in the low tens of thousands of dollars, leaving the remainder to labour costs and a margin for the contractor. In my experience, capital projects incur a materials and equipment cost roughly half of total cost, and the other half is incurred in the installation, seemingly totally different to your cost proportions. With the resetting of bluestone gutters, it seems that these are in perfectly good working order and do not need replacement. I can understand the importance of keeping the jobs associated with these types of projects, and I think that the teams that physically work on these projects are particularly good at what they do. However, it is difficult to understand and accept the cost associated with these projects. Does the Council think it is getting a competitive set of offers when tendering capital works, undertaking capital works which are not required, and is it spending the ratepayers' money wisely?
Thank you. Now is a statement to be read out from Angela Lease on item 7.2, Petition Response with speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise in Port Phillip.
Thank you. Statement reads, I noticed that an agenda item regarding traffic noise and problems with fast cars and motorcycle noise now that the weather has warmed up. I was not aware of the petition that has been submitted, but I would like to add my voice to that complaint. Over the last few warm days, it has been so frustrating to see our local area taken over by this unwanted element. It is no longer a family-friendly environment. There definitely needs to be an increased police presence in the area to deter this behaviour.
The next statement is from Pete Hennessy in regards to item 7.4, which is the petition response to Kerferd Road Crossover.
And the statement reads, I wish to make the following comments relating to the issue of possible changes to the intersections of Kerferd Road and Montague and Herbert Streets. In my mind, the recommendation 1 appears to be too heavily influenced by the Shrine to Sea project. I respectfully suggest Council's priority should be on the concerns and wishes of its resident ratepayers rather than simply agreeing to a state government proposal. 2 seems to place greater weight on a petition by just 26 residents rather than one signed by 258 residents. The fact that 10 times as many residents have signed the second petition should, I believe, be given more weight than appears to be the case. 3 seeks to use the safety aspect as a key reason to support its conclusion. However, Council road crash data states that no accidents have occurred at that crossover intersection in the last 5 years. It seems that the safety issues of Kerferd Road are elsewhere along Kerferd Road and not at our intersection. 4. Adopts what is probably the approach most likely to inconvenience the nearby residents who live in Herbert Street, Young Street and Herbert Place, plus Kerferd Road residents who have rear access to Young Street. It appears that the concerns of this cohort have been totally ignored. It is this apparent oversight, this lack of consideration of those most directly affected by the changes under consideration, which causes me the most grief with this proposal. This crossover is our main access to and from Young Street. Blocking it off will be of great inconvenience to those of us who need easy access to the Bridport Street shopping strip, our local go-to place. The closure will also put unnecessary pressure on smaller secondary streets, as well as accentuating the volume of traffic on the already busy main thoroughfares such as Richardson, Mills and Farrar Street and Kerford and Canterbury roads. A preferred approach, I believe, would be one of the following options. To install a roundabout at this intersection. This is one of the long-term solutions suggested by the authors of the Road Safety Audit Report commissioned by Council. To build a chicane style of roadworks across the Kerferd Road plantation, somewhat akin to that already in place at the Kerferd Road Danks Street intersection, or a new crossover between the Montague, Herbert and Canterbury Road Farrar Street intersections, thereby allowing cars travelling along Montague Street intending to go into Herbert Street to access Herbert Street, Young Street and the like in a more accessible and acceptable manner. Regardless, I believe it is incumbent on the Council to seek feedback to the proposal from all residents in the local area of Herbert Street, the section between Kerferd Road and Mill Street, Young Street, Herbert Place and the Kerferd Road residents who have access to Young Street before a final decision is made. Thank you for allowing me to present.
Thank you. Now the statement that will be read is from Bridget Canahoff and speaking to the same item.
Through you, the statement reads, I have lived in Albert Park since 1981, nearly 40 years. The council have been promising to do something about this terrible intersection on my corner for as long as I can remember, but they never do. I got something in my letterbox in September saying there was going to be a trial closure of the median, finally some positive action, but then I hear that has been put off as well. If only people could see and hear the things that I do. I hear cyclists abusing cars because they've been nearly hit. I hear screeching of tyres, tooting of horns. I see uncertainty with motorists as no one knows who is to give way. I've seen cars pull out onto Kerferd Road and then reverse back into the intersection. I have even seen cars going down the wrong side of the road. I've seen ambulances, low trucks, police cars and fire trucks. I've seen cyclists sprawled on the road, motorists cutting hard round corners to get into Herbert Street, motorists jumping out of cars to abuse other drivers. I've even seen a death. I don't even go out and look when I hear something anymore. Please fix up this mess once and for all. Thank you for listening.
This is a statement regarding item 14.1, the financial update, from Tamara Jungworth.
And the statement reads, I am the Director of Gasworks Arts Park at 21 Graham Street, Albert Park, and cannot attend the meeting, so thank you for reading this statement. Gasworks Arts Park is a large local centre for the creation of performing and visual arts and sharing that with our community through our theatres, galleries and outdoor events. And we have become well known across Melbourne because we have been making and sharing art for 34 years. Through the COVID pandemic, we saw firsthand the effects of artists not being able to work. More than half our staff are casual. We were able to support a few on JobKeeper, but the majority didn't qualify due to the intermittent hours common in arts work. The city of Port Phillip is famous for being a vibrant place to live or visit. I've loved living here myself for more than 20 years. The atmosphere is created through a combination of beautiful outdoor spaces, unique local traders, painters, performers, musicians, local theatres and markets. All of these people are small business people who have suffered through the pandemic. The long Melbourne lockdown has sucked the life out of our neighbourhoods, and now Council has the opportunity to invest in the recovery of our famous local vibrancy. Every dollar allocated to arts recovery programs has a multiplier effect, giving work to not just one person, but to many casual or freelance workers, event infrastructure suppliers and micro businesses. A council investment at this time will have great impact in building back the amenity which our local residents treasure, so that when they step out of the house there is once again something interesting happening in our neighbourhoods. I support recommendation 3.5 of item 14.1 tonight, particularly those strategies connected to art and artists.
Jack Robinson has also got a statement on the same item 14.1 to be read out.
Through you, the statement reads, the creative and cultural sector has been one of the hardest hit during COVID-19 and will continue to be significantly challenged as our city's recovery slowly begins. As a sector, the creative and cultural industry is the second largest employer in the city of Port Phillip. The creative and cultural sector is of vital importance to our city socially, culturally and economically. The city of Port Phillip is renowned for being vibrant, creative, diverse and inclusive community and place. It is one of the reasons we choose to live and work here and why visitors flock to enjoy our offer. Our sector offers experiences and activities which foster community cohesiveness, health and wellbeing and reduces isolation. Whether experiencing them as an observer or a creator, the arts can help us feel less alone in the world. The arts and arts experiences drive economic activity. It is not just the theatre ticket we buy, it is also dinner before the show and drinks after. It's our audience members strolling down our main streets as they make their way to the many cultural venues, events and places, stopping for a coffee. It's the hires and materials arts organisations source from local suppliers to create arts events. It's the employment opportunities we offer in the making and presenting of arts works and events. Raucous is an award-winning theatre ensemble of 15 disabled and non-disabled artists. We have been based in the city of Port Phillip for 20 years and are proud to be a part of our city's creative and cultural sector. We are so appreciative of council support throughout the years. However, as with all arts organisations, 2020 has presented many additional challenges. We have pivoted and continue to contribute to the community throughout lockdown, and now we hope you will support our sector's recovery so we can continue to contribute to our city. In these COVID times, the sector's contribution could not be more important. As arts organisations, venues, artists and creatives, we know that we have a critical role in recovery and beyond. An investment in the arts at this critical time is an investment in the short, medium and long-term health and prosperity of our city.
Okay, now it's working. Now the statement to be read from Ella Caldwell. Thank you. To the same item, 14.
Thank you. Through you, the statement reads, as a resident of Port Phillip, raising my children here, I have always been proud that the Council recognises and values the immense benefits offered by the arts. The arts play a central role in how a culture evolves by helping to reflect and shape our identity, building community and cohesion, and fostering self-expression, creativity and innovation. Artists and art organisations bring people together and promote empathy, a task that will be integral to our recovery and renewal following the ongoing impacts of COVID. As one of the industries hardest hit by the COVID pandemic, the arts will be in recovery for a long time. The live performance industry has experienced some of the most significant loss in income, resulting in serious impact on health and wellbeing in the industry. These health and wellbeing effects continue to wreak havoc, with job insecurity being a major factor. Many independent arts organisations will not be recipients of the state and federal arts packages, and the majority of arts workers are short-term casuals who were excluded from the federal JobKeeper scheme. An investment from the City of Port Phillip will have a significant and lasting impact on artists and art organisations. As the Artistic Director of Red Stitch Actors Theatre, I work directly in the arts in Port Phillip, and I have witnessed the support and loyalty local residents have for arts organisations, including our own. Through 20 years of experience garnering national and international recognition and critical acclaim, Red Stitch employs hundreds of artists annually, and we're proud to be a City of Port Phillip organisation. The coming years will be immensely challenging for our organisation and others like us, as we endeavour to do everything we can to support artists and audiences in Port Phillip. As a resident and an artist working in the city, I implore the Council to support the proposed arts rescue and recovery grants to help your local arts organisations rebuild our community.
And I believe this is the final statement to be read from James McCackey.
Through you, and the statement reads: Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to make a submission in support of officer recommendations. It is vitally important that available funds be transferred to programs and organisations in the arts as recommended. The arts are vital to the creation and regeneration of a creative and cohesive community. Through displays, performances and programs, people meet up with each other, learn more about each other and learn more about the many perspectives available on the issues that confront us in the world we inhabit. These things are always important, but never more so than when the community has been stressed and injured by the impact of COVID lockdowns. By accepting officers' recommendations, you will be taking an important step in the rebuilding of the community and creating foundations on which we can build for future growth. This will add the life and well-being of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bear with me as I find my right notes. Thank you. So now we have item 5, which is councillor question time. So councillors, do you have any questions for the officers? Okay, if there are none, we will move on to 6, which is the sealing schedule. And councillors, there are no items for sealing on tonight's agenda. So now we move to 7, petitions and joint letters. So we have 5 petitions to consider on tonight's agenda. So we will begin with 7.1, which is the joint petition response. Request to retain the temporary play equipment erected in Murchison Street, St Kilda East, and request to stop the removal of a child-sized tree, Page Street, Albert Park. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? I might ask one, if I may. So that would be, I will ask the question, and there's a few people that could perhaps answer for me. So from the recommendation, the bottom line is however much we would like to continue it, our insurers will not cover us for the risk. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly? Is that Anthony Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, preliminary advice from our insurers is that is correct, and that's why we have documented that in our officer comment in the petition.
Can I ask one follow-up question? So there is no mechanism by which we can pass all the insurance risk to the property owner or the resident who put that swing up?
Through you, Mayor, as a general principle, it is not possible for entities to avoid their liabilities in this situation. Where an injury or damage has occurred, even if the resident accepted any liability, is more likely that the plaintiff would be able to pursue the party for greater capacity to pay, i.e. counsel.
Councillors, are there any other questions? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Baxter, and seconded by Councillor Bond. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, it's a really tricky situation to be in. I understand that during lockdown in particular, people were using whatever open space they could or whatever amenity they could to try and maximise the important little things in life. But it's become a bit of a tricky insurance sort of issue and legal issue. it looks as though the officers have done some really good work here in looking at different options. So I'm happy to accept their recommendations for the moment, largely because lockdown is less of an issue than it has been in the past, and that access to our very good open space, including playgrounds and the foreshore and all of that, is now less restricted. So, and that was a large amount of the basis of the petitions in the first place, was that, you know, if we can't take our kids to playgrounds, where can we take them? So now that's less of an issue. I'm happy for us to continue investigating this if it continues to be something that we hear the community wants to pursue, even out of a lockdown environment. But at the moment, I think this is good advice.
Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is one of those really difficult decisions that, on the face of it, appear to make council look really out of touch with what the community would like us to do. But in situations like this, there is no choice for us other than to say we cannot support swings on hanging out of council trees on nature strips, purely for the reason that, as was stated earlier, we cannot pass the liability for that swing onto someone else. We are and will always remain the party that is liable for those risks and the consequences of anything that may result from that tree swing, and accepting that in 99.9% of instances tree swings may operate perfectly fine with, you know, kids enjoying themselves. Unfortunately, it's at point one that we have to have a policy that deals with, and it's that one instance that means we have to say no to the other 99.9. So I feel terrible making this decision. I'm sure we look like a terrible bunch of councillors for supporting this, but there's no real choice here for us other than to support the officer's recommendation.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I will put it to the vote. Are all those for this motion? Any against? Or is that's passed unanimously? That was passed unanimously. Now we'll move to 7.2, which is the petition response to speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise in Port Phillip. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this, or something different? Councillor Copsey to move, Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the item?
Only to thank community members that have been in touch to raise this issue. Yes, it has been very audible and visible over the last few weeks in particular. It is, I think, a shame that it's felt that there is a need to raise a petition to council to deal with what really is kind of basic road traffic and noise enforcement, but we will continue to advocate on the community's behalf on this issue and raise it up in our communications with local police. Looking towards the longer term, the recommendation around requesting the Department of Transport to review the speed limit and road safety signs along main roads, such as the Beach Road corridor, is a good thing to try and help mitigate this in future. So thank you to those who raised the petition, and we will continue to advocate on your behalf.
Councillor Baxter. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 7.3 is the petition response, the request for the removal of rubbish bin and the installation of 2 recycling bins at either end of the shopping strip on Tennyson Street Elwood. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Well, we have an officer's recommendation. Could I get a mover for it, please? I'll move this one. Would like Councillor Copsey to second. I don't need to speak to it, Councillor Copsey. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 7.4, which we heard lots of speakers to this item. Bear with me, my microphone's not happy. Petition response. This is the request to investigate alternative options to make the Kerferd Road crossover at Herbert Street safer. Are there any questions of the officers to this report? Councillor Pearl.
Madam Mayor, just I wish to inform the meeting that I have an interest in this matter, however do not have a conflict of interest on the grounds of the specified in the exemption provision in the Local Government Act 2020 that my interest is in common with other ratepayers and so insignificant that it could not reasonably be regarded as capable of influencing my consideration of and voting on this item.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Bond.
We've heard a number of the submitters speak to the fact that in the officer's report there was only one, I think the term they used is recorded accident in the last 5 years, whereas the evidence from the residents who live in that location, and I've seen the many text messages they send me, pictures of these crashes when they happen once every month or two. So I know there has been many more than just one crash in the last 5 years. What would cause the discrepancy between the observed number of accidents and the reported number of accidents?
Lily Rosick. Who is it, sorry?
That's for you, Madam Mayor.
Tony, sorry.
Brian.
Oh, Brian. I don't recognise your voice. Sorry, Brian. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just in terms of the last 10 years, there were 4 crashes, none in the last 5. There is one in July this year that is yet to be reported. What those figures do not pick up is either a near miss or a crash which doesn't involve a report to the police. So I suspect that might be where those discrepancies occur.
Are there any other questions? If not, we have an officer's alt rec. Would someone move this or something different? Councillor Bond.
How does the alt rec differ to?
So, Brian, are you able to explain where the difference is in the alt rec?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Or Lily, maybe do that for me. Yeah, Lily, thank you.
So, we've just clarified the recommendation to specify the total budget in 2021 and 21 and 22. So we've just made the recommendation a little clearer. So the total budget, as it states, for the project will be $45,000 of council funding, which is $35,000 in 2021 and $10,000 in 21-22, and that'll be used to implement the safety measures and evaluation. We are anticipating that the Department of Environment, Water, Land and Planning through the Shrine to Sea project also contribute $25,000 towards this project.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Bond? Yes. Can I get a mover for this alt-rec? Councillor Martin to second. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I would. I think I spoke briefly on this at our last meeting when we accepted the second petition on this issue. And at the time I outlined that this is a situation where we've got residents who live on the intersection of Herbert Street and Kerferd Road, who are concerned about the number of accidents that happen out the front of them. And I do know those accidents occur because a number of them have sent me through pictures. Every time there's a crash, I get a barrage of text messages containing photos of all the accidents, versus another group of residents who live not in the immediate vicinity of this intersection, and I accept they are going to be inconvenienced if this intersection does close. And what we're weighing up here as a council is, do we keep an intersection open that is causing accidents, that is a safety concern? We've heard from the residents tonight who live in that immediate vicinity. They do witness accidents here, and it is only a matter of time before there will be a serious accident with someone seriously hurt or killed in this particular location. I'm also weighing up my own experience of driving this section since this has been coming to council. I have been trying to drive through this intersection on a number of occasions to experience it for myself. And I do find it quite a difficult.
Okay, the microphones are again.
Thank you. I'll try this one. Maybe it's
bear with us, folks. It's rotating microphones, folks, if you can't see what's happening at home.
Third time's a charm. Let's see if I break this one as well. Yeah, I have been trying to experience that intersection.
Can I just get advice from the officers? Is there anything else we can do other than trying microphones to address this issue? No, we just have to keep swapping. Okay, or yell loudly. Well, yes. If you were sitting at home watching TV, we'd say go and get a cup of tea while the ad's on. So just bear with us, folks, as we try to work this out. Can I just check that all the other councillors have yours off when you're not speaking, because sometimes that can be the problem?
Yeah, I'm testing it.
All right, we'll try this one. Fourth time's a charm, I think. I forgot where I was. I was talking about, I have tried to experience this intersection as many times as I can over the last few weeks, just so I can educate myself. It is quite a difficult intersection to traverse. The angles at which cars approach this intersection do make it quite a dangerous one. So I therefore have no hesitation in taking this action to temporarily close this intersection and trial.
I was going to try and get through this item before taking a recess to reboot the system, but we may not be able to do that.
I can just shut up now and we vote.
We're going to take a 2-minute break, folks, while we reboot our microphone system. Come back after you've got that cup of tea for another for the finishing of this item. We'll just bear with us, and councillors, read your papers. Petition.
I believe we were nearing the end, but just to quickly touch on the Shrine to Sea, I know some think we should wait for the Shrine to Sea projects to occur and for them to pay for this, but I've been hearing about the Shrine to Sea for about 2.5 years now. There is very little detail about that. There is no plan for any works involved in that, and that could be years away before something physically gets built in anywhere from the Shrine to the Sea as part of that project, so I don't think we can wait what potentially could be years for something to occur in this intersection. So I don't think that's the solution to what we have here. So I'll leave it at that, and it won't say too much more.
Councillor Baxter. Sorry, I'm reading it. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak?
Very brief. Can I apologise to the local residents? I've used that rat run on many times, and I use the term rat run because that's what it is, and I stopped using it some years ago because I worried. I recognise the genuine concerns of many people who've contacted us here at Council, both for and against the proposal. I note the Council Officer's recommendation, and I note that it's only a trial. I think at the end of the trial we can review and see how effective this has been.
Would any other councillors like to? Councillor Sirikoff.
Is that better? Yeah, I totally acknowledge what Councillor Bond said about the Cedar Shrine project, and that would be a great solution for the entire length of Kerferd Road because we've got a number of crossovers. But I'm just wondering that, given that it is going to be done and maybe not as soon as what we would like it to be completed, and to possibly include a roundabout, which would be a fantastic outcome as suggested in the audit by the Safety Solutions Company. I'm just wondering if in the meantime, if it's possible for Council to address the crossover by taking further traffic safety measures as have been implemented in other parts across Port Phillip, such as installing speed humps or cushions to slow down traffic. I know just around the corner from myself, similar situation where you've got the evening traffic and you've got a lot of evening cars travelling from Albert Park to St Kilda. They're also doing similar type of fast driving along Park Road, and they did install a lot at Park Road and Langridge Street very effective speed humps that has really slowed down the traffic, and has there's been no accidents after the installation of those speed humps. So is it possible that Council could possibly consider speed humps on that crossover?
It's not time for questions. Unfortunately, we've passed the question time. It's just talking to the item. So you can just put your view that might be an option we could consider in the future. Great. Would anyone else? Councillor Pearl?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. 2 years ago, I think it was, where we voted, effectively ended up voting down the safety amendments to Kerferd Road, and I led that push on the basis that I thought within 6 weeks of passing the motion, so we passed a motion saying there's safety concerns on Kerferd Road, but any changes to Kerferd Road should be subject to consultation with the state government on what the Shrine to Sea was. So we didn't want to have double up. So we didn't want us to spend $1 million of our money, $1 million of IGRO's money, and then Shrine to Sea comes along and doubles up. The Shrine to Sea is becoming more like the Shrine to Nowhere. There's no plans. We're under our second round of consultation, and the significant amount of money that has been presented by the state government diminishes every year just by the sheer volume of cost of road projects, and this council knows that better than anyone. So every year that goes by, that money falls down. In hindsight, I think I got that decision wrong. If I'd known today that we still wouldn't have plans for the Shrine to the Sea, and we don't even have clarification if it's a road project, let alone a park and amenity project or a tree project, to be frank. So I think we got that decision, and I'm free to admit it. I led that because I thought we should wait for confirmation from the state government. But the reality is the state government hasn't been able to provide that confirmation, and we still don't have plans. And we still sit with the knowledge that Kerferd Road is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's the most dangerous road in the city of Port Phillip. I would like to see us still reduce the speed limit from 60 to 50. I have concerns about narrowing the road holistically in terms of the secondary traffic impacts that will have on Bay Street and Pickle Street, which I still don't think we've got data on. But there's a number of cross intersections on that road which are problematic, and this is one of them. The data and statistics officially don't indicate there's a problem there, but I myself have seen emergency vehicles there twice in the last 6 months. So I am 50-50 about doing this because I still think we should wait to see what happens with the Shrine to the Sea. But having sitting on a report which we already know this is a dangerous road, we've known it for years, and the efforts we've done to strengthen the road since that we voted that report, that we didn't vote the report down, we voted for it, but it was conditional that it meant the works didn't go ahead. I think we spent about $65,000-$70,000 putting those green strips on the bike lanes, which got dug up a few weeks later on the, I think it was the Page Street intersection. That road is still dangerous and we need to do something about it. I think we need to reduce the speed limit, but I think the trial to stop this intersection, I'm going to support it probably on a 60-40 type vote in my head, but I think at the moment it's the right thing to do. But we do need to commit through the council plan process a roadmap to get this section of road fixed from a traffic safety point of view, but also protect the heritage of this boulevard. So this is one of our city's most impressive boulevards and most historic. It's wide for the tram movement. It's also wide for the reason it was built wide was to bring tanks from the barracks down into the foreshore where they had 2 gun barracks down by the side. So it is actually a very historic place that we need to respect, and the roundabout in itself is a piece of beauty that we could make a bit safer. But I'm going to support this motion here tonight, probably, as I said, 60-40. I've thought long and hard about it the past couple of days, and as Councillor Gonzalo did, I took a few rat runs through it myself and come to the conclusion I'm going to support this.
Would any other councillors like to speak to it? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This is clearly a difficult issue for the community, and there's been a lot of passionate concerns raised by all sides, and I respect the individual positions that have been put tonight. The council officers have advised, council's own officers have advised that according to the road accident statistics, there has been 5 accidents in 10 years, up until the 31st of December 2019, with 1 serious crash, and there's been 1 in the last 5 years. Acknowledging that there may be many other accidents that do not meet the official statistics might be the case, but these are the measures and the statistics that we use to review all roads across the municipality, and those are the statistics that determine black spots and other ways we say whether the road is dangerous or not. So relying on those statistics as our way of determining the highest priorities for safety with our roads is the measure that's used to measure all. If this is the basis for closing this crossover, that we've had 1 accident, according to these statistics, in 5 years, if that's the benchmark, then there's going to be a huge number of other crossovers, roads, or other parts of the municipality that we're going to need to close if this is the benchmark that deems it necessary to close this crossover. Furthermore, the officers also advised that the Shrine of the Sea project, however long the incubation project may be, will provide $13 million, and it will address issues such as the structure or the safety of the roads, crossovers along that area. This project will enable the council to avoid spending $45,000 and potentially having to redo this or rip up what we do, whether that's in a year's time or 18 months' time. So for those reasons, I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. We've got a big night, so I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to thank everybody who's been in touch about this issue. It's raised quite a bit of debate, and I've appreciated all of the members of the community who've reached out to me with various views on this. My personal experience of this stretch of road is often as a pedestrian or cyclist, and I know that it's not easy to drive through either from feedback that I've received, but having experienced near misses myself on the bike along this stretch, I find the findings of the report and the officer's recommendations really persuasive and compelling. I've also spoken to people who live along this stretch, particularly people with young kids, who find navigating Kerferd Road in multiple locations pretty difficult, particularly as a pedestrian, and if you've got someone vulnerable with you. I'm welcoming the advancement of the trial. I supported it when we last voted on it in July, and I am looking forward to seeing the officer's recommendations tested here. I also wanted to note and welcome the contribution from Delwap to making this stretch of road a safer place for everybody who's using it. Thanks.
Are there any other speakers to the motion? All right, I will finally put it to the vote. So all those... Oh, Councillor, I want to close. Thank you. My head's not with me. Councillor Bond, did you want to close? I've forgotten that all night, haven't I? Thank you. Mayoral training wheels can't come off just yet. Okay, so everyone, I would like to put that to the vote. All those in favour and those against, that motion has passed.
Call a division, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so division for new councillors is where you'll all vote again. So all those in favour, Councillor Pearl, Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Bond, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Baxter. Those against, Councillor Clark and Councillor Sirikoff. So that motion has passed on the record. Moving on to 7.5, which is the petition response to request to annul the decision to approve planning application 875/2019. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? I have a couple, if I may. So this is to either George Borg or Lily Rozek. Does heritage overlay prevent any hospitality venues being built in areas of that nature? And there was a reference to, I can't remember the wording, but a community and civic area, and is that stop any hospitality venues being built in that area, or is it all discretionary kind of overlays?
I'm happy to answer that, Madam Mayor. It's George Borg. Thank you for the question. The answer to both of those questions is no. It will actually, as the strategic planners have put it, it will provide an adaptive use for a vacant heritage building, which is something Council supports.
And may I ask one more question, George? Was how many objections were received? Off the top of my head, I can't think of how many objections were received on this planning application.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. There was 13 objections received and one letter of support from the vicar who is at the Trinity Church.
And just to clarify, what is the number of objections that we usually use to bring something into the chamber?
16, Madam Mayor.
Are there any other questions for the officers? Councillor Clark?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted clarification around the impact of the car parking. I note that the application includes a reduction in the car parking requirements. What is the impact to residential car parking around that? Not on Brighton Road, but on Chapel Street, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Clark. There is a requirement for 15 car spaces for this use. There are 12 provided on site and available. There is a shortfall of 3. The applicants have provided 3 times the amount of bike parking that's required, so 10 bike spaces on there. Also, the site is in an activity centre, which discourages the use of private vehicles. It's also licensed premises, which also discourages the use of private vehicles. And this is located in an area which has excellent public transport.
Are there any other questions? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Anyone to second? Councillor Bond. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to this? Would anyone else like to speak to this item? I will. I understand the complexity of the interaction of active streets and venues and residential areas. We live in an area that is dense, and it is challenging to get the balance right. However, in this instance, I do believe that being on a major road and not directly next to any residential properties, I think it could be a reasonable outcome. So I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation in this regard. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Copsey, would you like to close? All right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. That was the last of our petitions, and the microphones are still working, so we are on fire now. So let's move to 14, which is, 8 to 14, which is the presentation of reports. So the first report we will consider is the presentation of the CEO report, which is 8.1. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something? Councillor Pearl, seconded by Councillor Copsey. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to this? You'll reserve your right. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to this?
I will, briefly, because I wanted to note the extremely thorough and regular reporting by the CEO to Council and to the public, and also this being our last meeting for the year. It's our last update from the CEO and the last CEO's report that we'll receive for the year. And what a year it's been. I particularly wanted to just take the opportunity to thank the CEO for what I think has been heroic performance throughout a very difficult 2020. That goes to the CEO, our executive team and all the staff at the City of Port Phillip. These operational updates provide a really good insight into just how much changed from what we planned at the start of 2020 and how much the organisation was able to pivot, to assess the growing and emerging needs in our city and respond to those, as well as dealing with very, very, not chaotic, but just ever-changing circumstances. And City of Port Phillip has had some, particularly with the foreshore and the density of creative industries, hospitality and tourism. It's been an extra special, difficult year for our community, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to note that, thank the CEO and organisation for all their hard work, and let's hope that 2021 brings some smoother updates for our CEO and our community.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the item, to the motion? I will just add a little comment. Again, I'd like to thank the officers for all the hard work and to acknowledge there's a lot of information in here, some of the grants that we've got in the latest state budget to where we're tracking with all of our priorities, capturing a lot of the last 6 months. And I just wanted to note there is some really startling figures in the regards to the social and economic recovery, that we had 45% drop in expenditure in our city in the last 6 months, or in April, I think, when the figure was taken. I mean, that shows the suffering and the difficulty that's going on in our community, and it's nothing to be scoffed at. And although we've done a lot of recovery items, there is so much greater need than probably any of the recovery money we could put in there. So St Kilda, Elwood and St Kilda East, which is particularly my patch, which is filled with creatives, it's particularly hard. So just wanted to acknowledge that that a little bit of the pain has been captured in the CEO report, and not that it's good, but it's good to be realistic about what's happening in our city. Councillor Pearl? No. All right, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. We're moving on to... Sorry, folks. We're moving on to 11.1, which is contract 1747, 1748 and 1749, Kerbside waste, recycling hard waste and dumped rubbish contract extensions. Councillor Clark, do you need to make a statement?
Yes, due to a material conflict of interest in working for a competitor for the service provider, I need to declare that and leave the meeting.
Thank you. We'll bring you back in once the item is finished. So, councillors, we have this report. Do you have any questions of the officers? Given that there are none, would anyone like to move this officer's recommendation, or Councillor Bond? Anyone to second? Councillor Copsey? Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. This is probably one of the most important contracts we will ever sign here at Council, or issue, or award. That being for the rubbish collection across the municipality. So, in terms of what we do, this is our bread and butter. So I wish the Four Seasons Waste Proprietary Limited all the best with the carrying out of this contract. There's always a lot of scrutiny over our rubbish collection, so good luck to Four Seasons, and hopefully they perform well in undertaking this task.
Councillor Copsey. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Could we please bring back Councillor Clark? We'll now be moving to item 14.1, which is the financial update first quarter for 2020 to 2021, and a financial review including live Love local funding and budget 2021-22 rate capping consideration. Now, just before we get into it, councillors, I've been advised that we have been notified of a typo in clause 4.4.4 of this report, which contains incorrect figures. Officers will amend the public record and update the website with the correct version after this meeting. Now, given the size of this report, we will be taking it in sections, but firstly, I'll open it up to questions. Are there any questions for the officers on this report? There are none. Okay, so this means I'm going to move to... I just check with Councillor Pearl. Are there any questions for... No, 14 point... No. Okay, so the first section that we are going to move is part 1, which will include 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 and 3.4. Is that on the... Yeah, do you want to speak to it? Just the CEO would like to just adjust this first section with a few errors.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just if we can change, just to reflect the previous decision on Kerferd Road on 3.3. 3.34 should read 0.035 million or 35,000, which is consistent with your previous decision. That would take the figure in the first line of 3.3 to 0.715 million. If we could make that adjustment, that would reflect the previous decision. The error was, it was 35,000 in this year for Kerferd Road, not 30,000.
So I'm just going to clarify. Part one is that we note the budget review, the first quarter budget review. We note the attachments of the financial statements. We approve up to $0.715 million of additional funding for the summer management program, the heritage program for extra pressure cleaning of key hospitality sites, and the Kerferd Road trial closure, and also the reallocation of the money from local roads and community infrastructure to the Rotary Park upgrade. So just to make sure we're really clear on that's the section that we're voting on. Do I have a mover for that section? Councillor Baxter and seconded by Councillor Bond. Councillor Baxter.
I might, maybe I'll say some stuff now so that I don't say a whole lot later to try and save some time. But look, the $1.7 million St Kilda Festival, the St Kilda Festival that we do every year, is one of the most efficient ways for us to pump a whole lot of money not only into the local arts, culture and live music sector, but into our local economy through businesses. It's such an amazing way to just bring 400,000 people into the area to come and spend money. So anything we're going to do in lieu of spending that money in that way is by definition going to be less effective. We have to recognise that. So what we've done is we've tried to identify what are the next best things that we can do in order to try and make sure that we're supporting both our arts sector, which is, as has been said, totally hurting from this crisis, and also support our local business community as well. So I think that the things that I'll be voting for tonight we'll all be doing as well as we can in lieu of a festival to achieve those same aims. So I urge my fellow councillors to see this as reallocating that money in the best way we can. We're not going to have the sort of impact that a St Kilda Festival will have in a normal year, but this is the next best thing, and we've done so much research into figuring out what is going to have the best bang for buck, and this is it.
And I love your passion, Councillor Baxter, but I am going to ask people to speak to the particular section that we're voting on, if I may, for future, so that...
I'm trying to save you time.
I know you're trying to save us time, but the CEO has pointed out, I'm still in training wheels, that we need to speak to the section we're voting on. So, Councillor Bond, did you want to speak to this section at all? Does anyone else want to speak to part one? I do. Briefly. I'm really glad to see the money put back in for the heritage program. Heritage and knocking over or demolishing of houses in our municipality that should be saved, that were missed in the initial heritage review that we did and overlays we did 20 years ago. And finally we've reached my end of the hood, or the canal end of the hood, and it's long overdue. So all the other sections have been looked at, and hopefully the properties that need to be saved have been identified, but there's still quite a large section in St Kilda East, St Kilda and Elwood to go. So this money puts back into the heritage program so we can do it all at once, or start those. It takes about 2 years to do, but this will all underway and hopefully identify the buildings that we need to put heritage overlays on and clean up any errors. So I'm very happy to see this money go back in. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter, did you want... I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Okay, part two, to clarify, this is 3.5 that we are discussing, and this is the reprioritisation of the $1.7 million from the budget from the St Kilda Fest to go to local economic and arts initiatives. So we've got four recommendations: 3.51, which is the reduction of registration fees for another 6 months; 3.5.2, which is the registration fees, which it covers groups that have not had discounts before, like including beauty salons; waiving of footpath trading fees for another 6 months; further rental waivers for council tenants, which is capped; and temporary hostile vehicle mitigation, 3.5.4. Are there any questions of the officers? Do I have a mover for this section? Councillor Bond, and a seconder, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to this? Would anyone else like to speak to this section? Councillor Bond, would you like to?
I wasn't going to speak, but I will just say this is continued support for our local traders in terms of reduction in registration fees, waiving of footpath trading fees and rent waivers for council buildings where we are the tenants.
Sinking feeling.
And I'll stop there because I'm testing fate.
The microphones are going to force us to speak quickly. I'm going to put that to the vote for 3.5. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Now we're going to do them line by line. So part 3 is 3.5.5. Now this is data and measurement at $20,000. Does anyone have any questions for the officers? I do. If you could, I'm not sure, who should I ask on this one to clarify what is that data and measurement for?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I know that part of it is reconciliation of the grant for a government grant for outdoor dining and activation. We're required to report back to the state government on that grant, and the data is required. I'll ask Ms Bennett to talk about the size of the grant and if there's any other need for that data. Thanks, Kylie.
Through you, Mayor. So yes, as I understand, the data and measurement is the core requirement to acquit the state government grants. We've received 2 very large state government grants. I'll ask Lauren Billikower to talk to the specific acquittal requirements.
Thank you. Through Mayor, yes, it is to acquit the $100,000 grant given to us to enable our community parklet program. We're required to adequately assess the success and impacts of these activations, utilising a range of measures including pedestrian counts, bike counts, car counts, net promoter scores, intercept surveys, dwell time, spend data, and where we have vacant commercial premises. So the funding is to enable us to engage those measurements.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd just also add that a number of the traders who've got outdoor activations are interested in a continuing arrangement past March. This data will also help to inform our policy in terms of the benefits of that going forward.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Bond.
Just quickly, is this $20,000 for the data and measurement of those parklets and outdoor tradings? Is it funded by that $100,000? So somewhere in our balance sheet there's a corresponding income line from the federal government for $20,000, or is this $20,000 of our money being spent to assess the impact of the $100,000 state government grant?
Yes. Who's it? Sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I ask Lauren Billikower to answer that. I understand that the grants offset a range of other things we had, but my belief is that this is our money. We can't use the grant money for evaluation, to answer Councillor Bond's question, but in receiving those grants, it did offset a number of costs that we'd otherwise funded.
Through you, Mayor, yes, the CEO is correct. That we can't use the grant money to pay for the data collection. That's something we are required to provide, but the grant funding did offset other operational budgets that we were able to save as a result of that grant.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Bond.
And just to clarify, it was a requirement of the accepting the $100,000 that we provide data to acquit against the $100,000 grant.
Through you, Mayor, yes, it is requirement of the grant that we measure the impact of those activations and are able to report on, their success factors.
Are there any other questions? Would someone like to move that to part 3? Councillor Martin, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to this?
Very briefly, just to support what the council officers have told us, that if we don't find the money to do the acquittal from here, we're going to need to take this money from another council program and have impact on that program. The other thing I notice is these wonderful initiatives that we've got out there at the moment, our parklets. The people who are using them would love to know how effective they are. We'd love to know as a council how effective they are, and some of them may become ongoing, but we need data from there. And if we can use some of these funds to provide that information, that would be extremely useful to us as we gather the success of these programs and look to see whether we're going to keep some of them on for next summer.
Councillor Baxter. Would anyone else like to speak to Councillor Bond?
I'd also like to know how effective they are, but I'm not quite $20,000 worth of inquisitiveness in me. It's a lot of money to acquit against a $100,000 grant, and I'm still not sure how I vote on this, but it just seems like a lot of money to acquit against $100,000 and to effectively do people counts on who's using our little parklets. I'm sure there are better ways to spend this money, but if it's a condition of receiving the $100,000 in the first place, I'm not really sure we have a choice here. So I'm still sitting on the fence. I don't know.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will. I will be supporting this. We are about to go on a holiday break, and perhaps it won't take the full 20,000, but it would be silly for us to leave officers in a position where it's not funded to do the work that they need to do. And we are a council that has been talking initially about measuring things, and I think that this is the first opportunity we have to fund something to be measured so we can make decent decisions of the future of them. So I am supportive. Obviously, if it can come in under, that's a wonderful thing, but I don't want to leave officers in a position for 2 months till council comes back and not sure if they can acquit the grant, but also collect that data proficiently to make informed decisions as we come back next year. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. We're moving to part 4, which is 3.5.6, additional shopfront activations at $100,000. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers? Do I have a mover for part 4? Councillor Baxter, a seconder? Councillor Crawford. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to this?
All right, I said I wouldn't, but I will. Look, these shopfront activations, as we've seen with data all over the world in terms of trying to revive areas that are struggling, has been shown to be, really valuable way of doing that. We know what we need to do. We know that we need to do it. The price tag is perhaps a little bit daunting for some people. I understand that, but the efficacy of it is. There's a lot of evidence out there to show how useful it can be. So I'm keen to see whether we can just see how well we can do on this.
I'll briefly speak to it. I think this possible investment back into our community benefits both traders and creatives. We have the Renew Australia happening on Fitzroy Street, and already there's a lot of response from landlords to have great, creative, innovative people in their shop fronts to activate the street and help the businesses survive on there. This money is to look at that for Ackland Street and also try to use that money for some of our other high streets, which we know are all struggling. So again, for a small amount of investment in our community, it can perhaps help bring back foot traffic, which means people are more likely to spend and help our businesses survive. So I am very much in support of this. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Councillor Clark.
I think through the council has provided a lot of to the traders traders and businesses, and I'm very supportive of that. I'm supportive of the funding and reduction in fees that to those traders who provide for employment and jobs for our community, which is clearly needed throughout this COVID crisis. However, we need to be mindful that as a council we have an operating deficit of $17.3 million for this financial year, which has increased to $17.7 million due to further impacts of COVID. As a result of that, I think we need to be very prudent with our money, and this package of the quarterly review has a package of increase in funding, and we are providing increases in funding for other projects and other expenses, and that's going to be placing further pressure on our operating deficit. And as such, I do not feel that I can support any further increases in expenditure, and we need to be mindful of our budget position. I appreciate that this money has come from the $1.7 million that that was allocated for the St Kilda Festival, but the saving of this money will, and let me say again, this is a first quarter budget review. We still have a number of quarters to go for the full financial year, and the saving of this money post the first quarter will enable us to have some flexibility for any other unforeseen expenses or further deterioration in our community as we go through the rest of the financial year. Thank you.
Would anyone of the councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That motion has failed division. All those for? Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Baxter. Those against? Councillor Clark, Councillor Pearl, Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff and Councillor Consolo. Moving on to part 5, which is 3.5.7, which is seed funding for activity centres. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers? Do I have a mover? Councillor Baxter. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Baxter? Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll be very brief. I note that this $100,000 is conditional. We're not, in the documentation I've got, we're not saying that we're going to necessarily spend it all. We're going to look for opportunities to spend grants of approximately We're looking at spending up to $25,000 each of perhaps 3 or 4 groups that
we're looking for $25,000. I don't think it'll last long, so be quick.
Oops. We'll try and be super quick. There's up to $100,000 available at Council's discretion for local trading groups for amounts of up to $20,000 each, and Council doesn't necessarily need to spend all of this money. It's simply there if there are groups who would be able to access it. I think eminently reasonable to have the money set aside to see if there are groups who are able to access it to revive their local shopping centres. I know, for example, how successful people are in the Port Melbourne area. However, we're not necessarily going to have to spend all these funds. They're there at Council's discretion further on. So I commend this to you as on the grounds that we have $100,000, but we
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? I would like to. I believe this was a recommendation or a suggestion that was approved by our business advisory group as a way forward to help high streets survive in this time by giving them the seed funding, if need be, to form trader groups along certain stretches of our high street. We have 3 successful ones in our municipality already on Ackland, Fitzroy and Bay Street, and it is a way that traders can work together to promote their street and help them survive difficult economic times. It is my understanding that the Business Advisory Group are in support of this, so I would ask you to consider that they have put that request. We have an advisory group for reasons like arts and all of the other things, so I would ask you to support this particular funding. Is anyone else would like to speak to the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of Part 5, 3.5.7? So that motion has failed. A division. So all those for, so that's Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Baxter. All those against. Councillor Consolo, Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Clark. We'll keep going as long as we can with the microphones. This is Part 6. So this is a 3.5.8, a COVID-safe community and live music event support. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Bond.
I know this may be a very difficult question to answer, but is there any indication on the potential timing of an event, if we are able to hold one at some point in time in the next 3 to 6 months, I'm presuming the time frame will be? I guess have we got a plan or a timeline or anything like that we're working to, or it's just put the money aside and at the time we're allowed to, we'll start organising it then?
Who would like to answer that one? Lauren Bilkower?
Yes, I can answer through you, Madam Mayor. We do have events booked in, Councillor Bond. I don't have the dates, but I know from January and February we have some outdoor events booked in venues such as the Katani Gardens. We also have our own events such as the Yalakut Willamnaji Festival planned in late March. So we are accepting event applications from here.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Consolo.
Reading through the description, I see it says, we'd therefore like to establish a $100,000 fund for these types of groups to utilise for this purpose. Is that referring to that it be section $100,000 for community events and $100,000 for live music support, separate?
Lauren Bilkower, are you able to?
Yeah. Sure. Through you, Mayor, no, we haven't differentiated in that way. Councillor Consolo, we certainly could do if that was a recommendation, but at the moment it's just a pool to support those events we feel are most in need of that support.
Are there any other questions? Do I have a mover for Part 6, which is 3.5.8? Councillor Martin, seconder. Councillor Copsey. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to this?
These are funds that would have gone to our local artists had the St Kilda Festival gone ahead, and the whole of our local community and people from outside our municipality would have had the pleasure of enjoying these people. If we're able to give them a chance to do what they would have been able to do in the large festival context sometime over the next 4 or 5 months, I think we should make every effort to make sure that A, these artists get a chance to have the opportunity to show their stuff in public, and that we, the people of Port Phillip and people from outside this area, have the opportunity to come and see them in some of the ways that one of the council officers already suggested, and any other ways that we can find to give these people the opportunity to perform in public over the next 6 months.
Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to support this measure. I've been really looking at summer coming up and thinking it's not going to be the same without events and music events, but also the community events, as Councillor Consolo has remarked. This is for essentially making it easier for those who want to put on an event to attract people back to our city, to spend money in our local area, but also to just come together after what has been a very difficult year, and to remove some of the additional requirements that really could be prohibitive for some of the smaller events producers, community groups, schools, neighbourhood groups and so on. So I think that this will be it's a very sensible contingency to put in place to make sure that those who want to put on events that will immensely benefit our city over summer are able to be supported to do so. Not just sanitizer, but I imagine it's going to involve extra requirements such as needing to, try and keep people distanced. So I'm imagining events marshals and that sort of thing. It's a really practical way to assist those who enliven our city. And I'm just also personally really excited for the actual events that it's going to enable, because I can't wait to go and see a gig again.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
I'm just breaking my rule every time now. This here is the closest thing we have to what the money was originally supposed to be used for, which is for support of live music. So I would just say that if we were going to do anything to try and keep live music alive in Port Phillip through the summer without a St Kilda Fest, this is what we should be investing in.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikoff.
I'd just like to note that the description for the COVID-safe community event and live music support does say this may include the provision of security guards, sanitizer stations, social distancing measures and the need to gather contact details. Whilst major events producers are more likely to be able to absorb this cost, it is likely to be prohibitive to schools, neighbourhoods and groups and community organisations. So I'm just questioning as to how this money will be spent, if it's going to be going to security guards, sanitizer stations and social distancing measures, when it's meant to be going for live music.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will speak to the motion. The difficulty for any creatives or music events is going to be the social distancing, and as we know at Council, we've already spent a small fortune of our budget on all these extra measures that are required. So when events or musicians are wanting to do something on a shoestring budget, the last thing they can afford is these extra measures, and this might make the difference of whether an event goes ahead. Proportionately, so they might have $10,000 between them, but if they had another $2,000 and could have these other measures, these things will go ahead. Now, we know St Kilda Fest. I think Councillor Bond always quotes the figure that we put $1 million or $2 million in and get $8 million back in revenue. $6 million, okay, that's pretty good for our local traders. So we know that investing in the arts in our community in different ways brings back dollars to our community. And as we said, 45% drop in visitors. So the biggest thing we can do for our community, our local economy, is get more feet back into the neighbourhood. And they're not going to come back to shop at they're not, we've got shops that are in other places, but what draws them here are our foreshore, our events, our reputation of being things happening, and there's always, great pubs and hospitality venues, some of our great venues, but a lot of the people come here to listen to music. I can think of 9 different theatres, and some of them are music spaces as well. We must be the most heavily arts-focused infrastructure, probably even more than the City of Melbourne. We have more of them. So this is a small amount of money, and we've shown again and again over history that austerity budgets do not help economic recovery. Now, this is a very small amount of money, and we know that when you invest in these things, it brings people back to our municipality and they stay and they spend money. And that's what our traders have been, they've been wanting to open up so people can come, but they want more people to come like they usually do in summer. And we're not going to have the normal trade we do because the tourism, overseas tourism is not going to be here. So we need to give Melburnians and Victorians and other Australians specific reasons to come here and spend their money in our local economy. And that's by having unusual, not unusual, just great events, however small or big and socially distanced they are. We need to give them a reason to come here and enjoy our municipality. So as they are doing around the world stimulus to help economies recover, and this space has been vacated very much by the federal government, so it's on us at a local government level, and even the state government, there's only a certain amount of money. So this is our community. These are our people. These are our venues. These are our small businesses. And if we don't step up and support them, you worry about empty shop fronts now. I tell you what, there'll be a lot more empty venues as well if we don't help them through this time. And that goes for all businesses, whether they're a food venue, whether they're an artistic small business, whether they sell, who knows what, that the sort of related businesses that sell to or they provide catering for events. These are all our local people. And I'm sure if they're sitting at home now, they're saying, please invest, please. So I ask you, councillors, there are some measures coming up, including this one, that can change the game for our local community. And you heard some impassioned pleas, and I almost feel like crying that I'm even having to have this conversation with you. We have a reputation that we're going to lose if we don't help our arts and music and local trading community get through this. And it is such a small amount of money that will multiply back by spend in the community. So please, I'm asking you to support this motion. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Clark.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'd also just like to provide a comment on the broader relief that the Council has offered. So, along with us considering these funds tonight, the Council has spent on COVID relief $2.8 million and out of a budget of about $5.6 million. So that ranges across a whole lot of sectors, emergency release, supplement meals, arts, community, footpath trading fees. So the Council has provided a lot of broad funding for the community as well. So thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin, would you like to speak or close?
I've been coming to the St Kilda Festival for as long as I can remember. All my children have been to the St Kilda Festival. We've had some fantastic experiences. And on top, Madam Mayor, of all the things that you've just said, I think we're going to be, even we can provide 1% of the experience that our community can get out of the St Kilda Festival, just for the sheer enjoyment of being there and listening to live music. That in itself is enough. But if we have the multiplier effect that we've talked about with Councillor Bond of getting a multiplier effect of 6 times that money coming back into our community, if we're getting people who've been involved in live music to perform in public for the first time in 6 or 7 months, I think this is a very, very, very important initiative.
I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion has passed. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Consolo and Councillor Baxter. All those against? Councillor Pearl, Councillor Clark, Councillor Bond and Councillor Sirikoff. We'll now move to Part 7, which is 3.5.9, which is the Further Arts Rescue Grants. Councillors, do we have any questions of officers? I have a couple of questions. It would be good to explain, could I just check? So some of this money is actually not extra money, but we cut quite a bit from our arts funding, our normal arts funding in this budget because, so this is an opportunity, is it not, just to top up back to basically normal levels of where we usually fund these grants program? Is that correct? I imagine I'm going to Lauren Bilkower.
Yes, through you, Mayor, we did reduce the budget for the Cultural Development Fund in this year's budget, and it was reduced by approximately $90,000 on what it has been in previous years.
So could I follow up? That means if we don't put this money back in, we're actually disadvantaging our arts community in a time in this next year. So that means that there'll be less money for the cultural development grants.
Correct. It means the Cultural Development Fund will be $90,000 less than it has been in previous years.
I have another question, but it's gone out of my mind. Does anyone else have any questions while that comes back to me? Oh, Councillor Bond.
So notice this item at 100.
What have you done, Bondi?
This item has $100,000 in it, and $90,000 is going back into the cultural development grants funds. What's the other $10,000 going on?
Through you, Mayor, we intended for the whole $100,000 to go into the pool, which is the Cultural Development Fund money.
Could I ask a question? What kind of range of arts have we supported using that could apply for this kind of rescue grant?
Through you, Mayor, the criteria for the last round of rescue grants basically focused on opportunities for local creatives, musicians, performers, creative institutions, creative organisations to enable projects that would support recovery. So it wasn't so much for, personal development of practice, but more for works that could kind of engage the community, get them out, reactivate our spaces, provide opportunities for local performers, venues, musicians. So these grants can absolutely fund a really wide range of projects from our creative industries, organisations, our designers, our photographers, our illustrators, as well as our performing arts, our visual arts, our venues, our community groups. So really, really broad range.
And the focus is not just on the artists, but how they can help the community recover? That's one of the criterias?
That's what we did. We did that with the Arts Rescue Grants that we ran last year. So we're proposing to run this, to merge the Cultural Development Fund with the Arts Rescue criteria that we did last year. And that was having a particular prioritisation on projects that helped enable recovery. So be it recovery of the community or a recovery of creative organisation, recovery of a space, a venue, but, it did have a COVID flavour.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Do I have a mover for Part 7, 3.5.9? I'll move this one. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter. So the further arts rescue grants, this is again part of the wider package that the last council's intent was to use this money to support our traders and our artists. And as we heard, they're on their knees. And they will continue to be on their knees because they can't go back to full capacity for quite a long time. And again, I will state the federal government funding, the supposed $250 million, has not been seen, and it will not be seen at the local level. It'll get swallowed up by the time it comes down to these kind of organisations and artists in our local community. And yet, when you think about Australia, the things that people know first are our actors, our musicians, our artists. This is the ecosystem that helps develop and grow these people to become the legends that they are. Sidney Nolan lived here. He might not have got a grant back then, but, if he was here right now, he might apply for it. We have Paul Kelly, the singer, who's in our hood. We have had lots of creatives that choose to live here because their council supports them or gives them the opportunity to apply. The number of grants that will get taken from this money is so small compared to the need, but it's what enables excellent, innovative, exciting critically acclaimed work to happen here in our municipality. And it is a reputation that the City of Melbourne can't beat. It all happens here. And we don't want them to all go and live in Northcote. We want them to stay here. We want to keep this municipality exciting. And this small amount of money will probably, I imagine, it will go to 10 different artists, and that's a group of money that, again, that multiplying effect. And when they live and work here, that means they buy food and drink, spend money in our neighbourhood. So it's about economic recovery as much as it's about the social recovery. We need to tell the stories of the pandemic. This will go down in history. Some of the things that can be applied for you under the Cultural Development Fund is historical projects. Imagine that. Imagine having an amazing historical project that will capture how we suffered through a really long lockdown, captured like we do. History is also a huge part of this area. So I guess I'm going to go on. I try not to speak very long, but tonight I will on all these items. So again, councillors, I ask you to support this small amount of money. It will multiply in our community. And I know that our Arts Advisory Group, who we have nominated, this panel, are in support of all these measures. So just like we seek advice from our wider community, we have sought the advice and recommendations of our expert panels who are part of our community. And they are in support of this. So I ask you, please support this motion. Councillor Baxter. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin.
I spent most of my life living and working in the city of Port Phillip. Nearly all of that time I've been working in education. I've gone to school in the municipality. I've taught for 25 years in the municipality. My children have been educated in the municipality. The core of all the educational institutions has been the arts. There is such a fundamental commitment to the arts in the city of Port Phillip. The people of Port Phillip expect this council to look after the arts community, and the arts community are doing it really, really hard. We heard earlier at the start of the meeting from some representatives of that community. They told us how tough they're doing it, and we know the skills that they bring to this community. We can't do very much to help them, but this small amount of money is going to make a huge difference to members of those communities, and it's going to be recognised by the people out there, our ratepayers, as something that we're going to do that's going to be a very, very, very good thing for this community, both now and long term.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item or the motion? Councillor Copsey.
You've both spoken so well, and I also think that our speakers from the public were so eloquent tonight, so I almost don't want to ruin the vibe, but I just wanted to say that I've had the privilege during the previous term of sitting on the Cultural Development Fund committee from time to time, and there are always more worthy projects than we have money to allocate for. So what you said, Councillor Crawford, is true around the fact that the previous council, in order to get through with a budget that was respectable in these times, did have to trim funding, and the arts was one of the areas that missed out during that time. And with the loss of the St Kilda Festival, it is a really big blow. So some of the things that we would normally have done to support that community, we haven't been able to so far. This is a chance to actually just bring it back up to something that's respectable and enables us to support further artworks and performance. It's different from the previous measure that we passed in that this will go to a larger range of disciplines. So people who are in photography and, I know, gosh, from the applications that we get, it ranges from everything from photography through painting, through drama, through dance, yes. So it's a really important round, and I think that all of us in our own ways will have turned to artists and creatives to have gotten through this year. I know I watched a lot of stories and things to help me make sense of this very difficult year and to draw inspiration and to just get through and hear some stories of people who, had gone through difficult times. I can't wait to see what sense our local arts community makes of 2020, and to me this is a great investment in the art that they'll produce and in the way that that will help our community to come back together and make sense of what's been a very difficult year. Plus, as everyone said, it comes back to us in an absolute multiplier. This is money that actually really keeps a key sector of our community and our local economy going. So I would strongly I beg councillors to support this for an industry that really contributes a lot of financial benefit, but so much more to Port Phillip.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? I'll close then. We talk about jobs, wanting to create jobs in our community. This $100,000 does that. We talk about the jobs, the skills that will be needed for this next century, and they're different skills to what was previously the normal education. And the kind of skills they talk about are all the skills you develop through the creative industries. We spend so much money building stuff. We build a building for $10 million. It doesn't directly put back into our community immediately. It's not investing in people's jobs. This is people. And what we've realised at the bottom of an economy is people. And what we've realised in this pandemic is we're a community, and it's actually people at the end of the day. So if we as a council are not looking to support our people, but we'll build another building, I don't know, there's no balance there. And for a small amount of money compared to the huge amount of money we spend on bricks and mortar, at the end of the day, it's about people. And I want to be proud. I want to be out there and I want to say, yeah, we're backing you in with this small amount of money. At one point, people come and set up businesses in here. We've got a strategy about how to bank our cultural capital. People come here because we're a hub of creativity, like South Melbourne. We had the #1 game developer who works out of South Melbourne in the world. I don't know if it was just for a week or a month, but the Goosey game. But in the world, we were #1, and he works in our municipality. That's why people come here. So the kind of multiplier effect, you cannot bank on that. People set up their businesses here because we are one of the cultural capital, and we're a supportive council, and we looked at, and we've got a strategy, which is still our current strategy, to build on that, to support it. So this is a little step towards that. I'm not even touching, we talk about the economics, but man, the healing, the mental health healing that our community needs to do, and we are long from it being over, that's also what the arts does. And that is worth billions. So we know the Productivity Commission does reports again and again how mental health slows down, costs so much to the economy. Well, on a scale here, when the creative industries and hospitalities are the two key industries in our little municipality, if we're not supporting that, we're not doing right by our community. So I'm going to shut up and put it to the vote. All those in favour of Part 7, 3.5.9? That has passed. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Consolo and Councillor Baxter. All those against? Councillor Pearl, Councillor Clark, Councillor Bond and Councillor Sirikoff. Now we're moving to Part 8. Just to let you know, we will take a break once we get through these items. We're moving to Part 8, which is 3.5.10, which is waiving the fees, $15,000 for the Carlisle Art Space. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers? Councillor Pearl.
I'm happy to move.
I'll just check if there are any questions. I will ask a quick question. So this $15,000 is for the next 6 months to waive fees to allow community artists to use our space. Is that correct? I'm going to go to Lauren Bilkower.
Through you, Mayor, yes, that is correct.
And it's just the 6 months, it's not for the full, this 2021 in full?
It will be until it runs out, so it depends on how many applications we get, how long they wish to exhibit for, these sorts of things. But we're estimating it will be for the 6 months.
Great. Any, Councillor Bond? No, yeah, question?
Sorry, just a question. If we don't give this fee waiver, are we likely to have the bookings? I guess the point I'm trying to make is, you know, is this really going to cost us anything? Because if we don't give it, we're not getting any money anyway.
Through you, Mayor, I anticipate we will get bookings. However, this might expand the breadth of bookings that we're able to receive and consider.
So might ask a further question to that. So it's the members of our community who perhaps are more disadvantaged or don't have the money to exhibit at the moment. That's what you're saying. This would maybe allow people in a different situation right now to exhibit when they perhaps couldn't.
Through you, Mayor, yes, that's correct.
So Councillor Pearl, you want to move? I'm happy to second. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. I think this is easy money, so to speak, to give away, because I doubt, to Councillor Bond's point, we're going to get anything like that in terms of fees, because the space in the next 6 months is not going to be used anything like it was pre-coronavirus, and the space hasn't been used for a very long period of time. So the reality is that the revenue that we're foregoing here, I doubt it's ever going to be earned in any case. And this is an example of direct leverage through council asset, where you probably derive some economic benefit for a small number of artists, but also the psychological aspect of it is just getting people back exhibiting in a public space for a short period of time. So I don't really have too many issues with it, because the reality is, if we didn't approve this 6 months down the track, I think we're going to lose 15 grand anyway. So happy to support.
I'll just quickly speak to this one. You know, we have a lot of groups like The Torch, which is our Indigenous art program our art program for Indigenous people in jail, who do some amazing works. We've had a young gentleman who, when he was dealing with mental health, discovered an art skill, but exhibitions that perhaps they couldn't afford to do on their own. So this is just such an amazing way to allow people to exhibit. And the point I'm going to make on this one is, art can change the trajectory of someone's life. There could be a kid heading down a wrong path and they've discovered music or art or any of those things, and you hear it again and again, and their lives get turned around. Sometimes it's sport. And we fund a lot of sport in this municipality too, way more than we do the arts indirectly. So this could be, you know, we don't know. That young gentleman whose name eludes me, his art helped him cope with his mental health. Otherwise, we don't know where he'd quite be. So I'm very much in support of this. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikoff.
I would like to support this motion because as Marcus said, that this is not going to cost the council anything because it's a waived fee, and I think this is a good thing to go ahead with.
Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Let's put it to the vote, folks. All those in favour of 3.5.10? That's passed unanimously. 2 more to go. Oh no, 3 more to go. Sorry. Part 9, which is 3.5.11. This is one-off recovery grants for City of Port Phillip's key arts organisations up to $120,000. Do we have any questions for the officers? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in support of this motion. However, what I'd like to see is just, rather than just give money to people, I'd like them to make an application to say, this is how we intend to use the funds, so that it's very clear what the funds are going for. I'm all in favour of supporting the arts, as I've mentioned a couple of times earlier. I'd also like to know, though, how these funds are going to be used. I'm sure they will be used very effectively, but I'd actually like to see that before we hand the money over.
Lauren Bilkower.
Through you, Mayor, the funds are intended to assist with the costs of reopening and providing performance or exhibitions in a COVID-safe manner, but we can certainly ask for an indication of exactly how those funds will be allocated within those organisations.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? I do believe this was a recommendation on an idea that I had, correct me if I'm wrong, last term around that part of the difficulty for a lot of these organisations is they've had no income, no way to earn money, and it won't for a long time of any capacity, so that this money could be used if it was to pay rent or electricity, if that's going to keep their doors open. So it was not specifically necessarily for a project, but what forever does it come from that idea that if this is going to help them survive, then that money can be used in that way?
Through you, Mayor, that's the case. That's absolutely the case. And also the principle that whilst these organisations haven't benefited from state and federal funding, it's likely that further state and federal funding opportunities that become available will more likely be for projects or for programming opportunities, whereas there's no support at all for just assisting with operational costs.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Would anyone like to move this motion or recommendation? Councillor Baxter, and I'm going to second it. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yep, I will, if the microphone allows. Yeah, look, these the key arts organisations that we're talking about here are pillars of our arts ecosystem in the city of Port Phillip, and as has been said before, that's an ecosystem that is in real danger here. We already saw prior to COVID, as a tendency through gentrification and other sort of factors of a bit of arts flight from the area. Now that can either accelerate through COVID, or we can try to stem that, and that's by putting money into these key organisations that we already know operate well, and we have trusted relationships with them, and we know that this is less about throwing money and seeing whether it sticks. This is actually giving money to good operators who know what they're doing. This is part of just trying to keep our status in as an arts-based city.
I will speak to it. I'm sure you're not surprised. This is another one I'm particularly passionate about. When I was a little girl and had big dreams of being an actor, and I was living in Brisbane, there was a little independent arts theatre that had got a grant, partly through council and partly through a bequest. And it still exists, the Brisbane Arts Theatre. And that became home for generations since the 60s of aspiring actors to learn your craft, and it was also a place where people could learn their stage craft, like behind the scenes. And it was the most magical, wonderful place, and it made money, and it runs still, and it is just an incredible asset. And there are generations of kids that came through there that went on to study and become artists in their own right, whether they were musical or just straight acting like I do. And that is what these organisations, which some of them have been here 40, 50 years, some 20 years, so they are long-term residents. They have contributed so much in ways that you cannot measure clearly, as well as the economic benefit. They are jobs, they're providing jobs, they're micro-businesses, they're just as valid businesses as any of these traders that we're giving footpath trading fee waivers to. So I think we need to be fair in our assistance across the municipality. We're giving lots to the high street traders, which is great, and I'm totally in support of that. But we're not giving as much to the arts communities, which are equally valid small businesses that employ people and spend money and bring people to our municipality. I would have been happy to pass the whole package, because I do think it's in many different ways, it uses different ways to activate and encourage people to come to our municipality. But these arts organisations, they are critically acclaimed across the world. Raucous, one of their last productions in the last couple of years was taken then to the Arts Centre, and had a season there. Red Stitch is acclaimed across the world, and some of their plays are spectacular, and they have an in-house writing program. Red Stitch is such a, my words elude me, where they're like pot where they allow lots of different artists to use their space to grow and innovate, and they encourage female writing. They've just run a program, She Writes. I'm going to see something there shortly. Did you know Jermaine Greer spent time in Elwood? And they're writing a play on the back of the funding that we gave them a year ago. This is the early development stage of a play about Jermaine Greer. Like, really exciting things. The arts is the torch, the Indigenous art that is renowned. There are just the tapestry, Australian Tapestry Workshop. They have huge tapestries that hang in art galleries and hotels, and this is where the artist gets their start, and they give back to their community, and they welcome you in to see all of their things, and it's interesting and it's exciting. And again, we wouldn't turn our back on some of our sports. If this was a sporting grant coming to us saying our clubs won't survive if we don't give them this money, I doubt that many people would vote against that. Well, it's the equal thing. So we give lots to our sporting people, as we should. We should give lots in this particularly crucial time. Like, it's not a time like normal. These are the organisations which make our reputation better. Without them, we had this reputation for so long as the Melbourne's playground, as the arts hub of this city. Why would we want to give that away? But that's where we're at. This industry is on its knees, and they may have to shut doors if they cannot get the support. And a lot of the state grants have not gone to them. They have not been eligible. None of the federal money has gone anywhere, and unlikely to get to them. This is a make and break time. It's like the Edinburgh Festival. People go to the Edinburgh Festival to spend money because it is so renowned. Well, that's the type of stuff that starts here and has continued here over a long time. The Palais, the Alex, the Phoenix Theatre, generations of school kids learning what it is to be in the arts, Theatre Works, Gasworks, Linden, Red Stitch, National Theatre. Where else have I missed? There are just so many. I'm probably missing some now, as well as the little galleries, many Bright Space. There's so many. Please think about the jobs, the economic benefit, the mental health benefit, and that they are our residents. They are the people that make up our city. And they're asking you right now. We talk about helping the disadvantaged. Well, right now, that industry is the disadvantaged. And for some of them, we don't know. It's about if they lose their jobs, who knows what economic position they'll be in. But more than that, and Kirsty said it well, this is the dreaming. This is what makes us human. And we as a council have the privileged position of being able to support these exceptional organisations in our hood. It's like when they debated buying blue poles and years later it's worth millions. That's the kind of game we're playing. You can't always measure it, but the benefits. So one of the things I'll tell you that there's, oh no, I won't go into that because I know that's confidential, but there's stuff. People want to come here. They want to spend their money here. They want to film here. They want to do things here, but that isn't on the back of this council for the longest time supporting the arts. So please, councillors, I ask you to support this one. Would anyone else like to speak? Or should I just put it to the vote? Oh, Councillor Martin.
I'm not very good at showing passion, Madam Mayor, so I can't follow you with the passion. I'm sure there may be some concerns with people sitting around this table. We're giving money to organisations, and what do we get in return? How do we measure it? And Councillor Baxter used the phrase earlier saying we don't want to be seen as throwing money away, and none of us want to do that, which is why I asked my question to the council officers earlier. These organisations are outstanding organisations. Not only are they wonderful people who are working in them, not only do they produce wonderful works in their various arts fields, but tens of thousands of people in our municipality and outside our municipality get so much benefit from attending these organisations. It helps their mental health, all of that. But there may be people in this room who'd feel a little more comfortable if they knew how these funds were being used, and I'm sure they're going to be used to good effect. So, as I asked earlier of the council officers, if at the end of all this we can go to the public and say, here's how we as a council supported organisation X. They couldn't reopen because they couldn't pay their electricity bill. They were skint. We were able to provide that seed funding to get the doors open. If we can show everyone how we've done that, no one can say that we're throwing money at organisations. People can say we're using money very, very astutely to support some fantastic organisations and improve the mental health of our society.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed. So I'm going to do a division. All those in favour? Councillor Martin, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Consolo and Councillor Baxter. All those against? Councillor Pearl, Councillor Clark, Councillor Bond and Councillor Sirikoff. Two more items. Part 10, which is 3.5.12, Shop Local Marketing Campaign. Are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Can officers provide some details about where the $100,000 mark came from? So this is a recommendation of the Business Advisory Group. Where did the $100,000 come from?
Lauren, I think you're in the hot seat.
Through you, Mayor. The $100,000 came from, there's quite a detailed budget of communications and promotional campaigns in all of our neighbourhoods, across a variety of channels. So we've got signage, we've got advertising, we've got social media campaigns, we've got video production to tell some of the stories of our traders in our community. We've got electronic signage, we've got flyers, posters, bus shelters, bin wraps. So all of the things that we have planned in the various neighbourhoods have added up to the 100,000.
Are there any other questions, councillors? I have one question, again for you, Lauren. How have the traders generally or along the strips responded? Is this something that they really think, something that they want?
Through you, Mayor, this is absolutely something that they have strongly articulated to us that they want. They need new customers as well as their existing customers being retained. They're very keen to see us try and encourage greater shopping and trading throughout the municipalities. So, for example, someone from Elwood being encouraged to go to Port Melbourne, someone from Albert Park being encouraged to go to Ripponlea, and us really communicating, the benefits on what's on offer in the various neighbourhoods, and indeed what makes the various neighbourhoods special and what kind of trader profiles we have available.
Are there any other questions? Would someone like to move 3.5.12? Councillor Copsey and seconded by Councillor Baxter. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to this?
I'm supportive of this. I think one of the, I hate the stupid cliche of the silver lining, but one of the things that we've, I think, treasured through this whole shared experience is the increased connection to place. And, as a council, I think we've struggled for many, many terms to try and find ways that we can effectively foster that sense of connection to the your local shopping village. And I think that it's just been so heartening to see the community's response during this difficult time, which has been very community-minded, which has been very much about supporting local streets and wanting to preserve the things that we value on our high streets in particular. So let's try and keep that going, and let's provide this support so that the local business strips and the Business Advisory Group can take one of the small silver linings of what's been a really difficult time and keep that spirit going.
Councillor Baxter? Would anyone else like to speak to Councillor Pearl?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My concern with this initiative is that it's too broad and too shallow in its execution, and that it will get crowded out substantially by a number of existing state, federal and other local government campaigns that are already on tune with this message, and $100,000 to be spread across that amount of platform and collateral across our city with 120,000 thereabouts participants, target market participants anyway, is not going to deliver substantial value. And I feel slightly awkward having this position, but I'm trying to be as pragmatic as I possibly can because I have the utmost respect for the business advisory group. But if there was a more targeted initiative for the $100,000 from a marketing point of view, which differentiated ourselves from other cities, or competitors, really, that's what they are, and had a bit of edge to it across maybe one or two platforms, I would be interested in not only the $100,000 but leveraging it up. My concern is we're just not going to get a multiplier out of this money. The existing City of Port Phillip campaign around the local signage is probably as effective, if not more effective than this. And we're also forgetting that there's a ground-up element here of social media that's probably still under-leveraged. That can, there's some great projects out there with things Live, Love, Work Port Phillip, just to name one. The amount of content they're putting out and the engagement they're getting, advertising small to medium enterprises in our city is, I think, better than the $100,000 we're about to spend here. So I'm not going to support this with a slightly heavy heart because it's come from a recommendation of a group of people who I highly respect, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of their views. But this is not targeted enough for me to hit a target market that's going to demonstrate return on investment. Therefore, I'm unfortunately going to vote against it.
Councillor Martin.
Madam Mayor, my inklings are to support the motion, but I also take Councillor Pearl's concerns on board. If this motion was successful, I'd ask perhaps whether Councillor Pearl would be interested in working with a group with people like myself to work with council officers to ensure that this money is more effectively targeted. And if the motion is lost, perhaps Councillor Pearl, you and I could work with the local business associations and council officers to come back with a motion that perhaps better suits or better addresses the concerns that you've raised.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond.
I also won't be supporting this, as I don't think a $100,000 campaign run by a local government body such as the City of Port Phillip is going to change consumer behaviour, and I think that's what we're hoping to have here, is a change in consumer behaviour in order to get people to shop at their local high street. That we have lots of them across Port Phillip. $100,000 is not going to achieve all that much. I think this money could be much better spent in a very different capacity, in a way that would actually achieve an outcome that would actually help our local businesses. I think, and I mean this politely, this is probably a little bit of a City of Port Phillip vanity campaign. It's about making us feel good about ourselves and for us to be seen to be doing something for our local areas. I think we should look at what will this actually achieve, and I don't think it will change any consumers' shopping behaviour. Therefore, I don't think we should be supporting it. We should be using the money for something that would be much more effective in helping our local businesses.
Any other speakers? Councillor Consolo.
I'm a bit on the fence about this one. I think social media, etc., has a lot of impact, and I've heard recently the high streets being upset that people are talking them down. It's like, oh, everyone's always bagging Bay Street, so bad, all the vacant shops. But this is an opportunity to celebrate what is in different places and really reflect as a municipality. I personally know Port Melbourne very well, and I enjoy that community that we've established up in our end. But I really don't know Elwood, and this will probably lure me out of my comfort zone to shop in a different area. And this is that opportunity to put it together and celebrate what we have, even though, yes, the money is significant. I'd hope it to be spent effectively.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey, would you like to close? Let's put that to the vote, folks. All those in favour of 3.5.12? All those against? That motion has failed. Division.
Yep.
All those for? Councillor Copsey, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Baxter, and those against? Councillor Martin, Councillor Pearl, Councillor Clark, Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff. We have reached part 11, the final part, which incorporates 3.6, which is some cost increases for some key projects already underway. 3.7, which is noting that we are receiving 3.2 million of Commonwealth Government Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program extension. With 3.8 is notes where we allocated a share of the announced 13 million from the state government budget for cycling routes. Notes that we have applied for 3.9 to get 25% back on the congestion levy, and 3.10 notes Council's financial strategy, and in particular that we are not applying for an above the rates cap variation for budget 2021-22. I believe that's it, isn't it? Just checking. So, are there any questions on this point? Councillor Bond.
Just a question for officers. Have we had a response from the state government on the 2020 congestion levy as to whether or not we will get a 25% refund?
Chris Cowell?
For you, Madam Mayor, I can advise Council that the $250,000 is in our bank account.
Councillor Bond.
I thought that was the case, but wasn't entirely sure whether that was public knowledge or not yet. Hence I asked the question. So given we already have the money, do we need to change the recommendation here to reflect the fact that we've already received that money?
Money was received today, so we probably, for accuracy, Councillor, you're probably correct.
So we'll note that have received a 20.5% refund?
Correct.
Applied for and received. Are there any other questions of the officers? Let's put that to the vote so that we can take a break. Or Councillor Copsey, did you want to speak? No, you're happy to move it? Is that what you're... Anyone to second? Councillor Baxter? Councillor Copsey?
With the amendment noted. I'll reserve.
What was that? Sorry, Councillor Copsey, I couldn't understand.
Moving it with that amendment as discussed.
And did you want to speak to it at all?
I'll reserve.
You reserve, Councillor Baxter? Anyone else want to speak to it? I'll quickly speak to it. I note that there is some money for some soil contamination at Waddy Watson Oval, which will go to the meeting that we had today, which will be good news that they are really keen to get their lighting and scoreboard up, and this is one of the steps that's required to get that happening, hopefully for the next season. So that's good news. I will note that very much. That's very good. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey, do you want to close? Okay, let's put this momentous last part, 11, to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. So, councillors, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break because we're all a bit exhausted, and we'll be back in 10, which will be 10:01. The meeting. So we have reached 14.2, the Port Melbourne Business Association 2021 to 2026 Special Rate Review. Consider submissions. Councillor Martin. I'm going to be the world's biggest hypocrite, but given the time, can we be concise when we speak? I promise not to speak much more after here. I promise to resist the temptation, but if we could be concise, given the time, and we've got a lot of items to get to, also the urgent items and confidential. Okay, so here we go. Any questions for officers on the Port Melbourne Business Association Special Rate Review? No. Councillor Pearl to move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bond. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to it?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This is coming back for a decision later on. We note the feedback that's come in, but I would say I'm a huge supporter of this business association, and I've spoken to a number of traders that don't support it as much. And what I always say to those traders is get involved with them and see, give them the feedback in terms of how they can help your business grow. And more than any other trader association in the city, in my personal opinion, they'll do everything they possibly can to help you and help your business grow, because that's what they want. They want a prosperous Bay Street, they want a prosperous Port Melbourne, and that helps us in our goal to make a prosperous Port Phillip. So very happy to support this and looking forward to the final report coming through, and I wholeheartedly support the Port Melbourne Business Association.
Councillor Bond.
Yes, just very briefly, we've got two wonderful traders associations in St Kilda, but I always admire the work that is done by the Port Melbourne Business Association. They always seem to be able to lift the bar and come up with some really great events and some really great activity in their streets and some great support of their traders, and it's a credit to the committee and the leadership of that particular group that they are so effective and continue to get the traders to sign up again and again and again and renew this special rate. So well done to that committee and to that committee's leadership.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll put it to the vote. Oh no, sorry, back to Councillor Pearl. Did you want to close? Put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Moving along to item 14.3, which is the proposed tenancy agreement, the Port Melbourne Soccer Club. It's the completion of statutory procedures. Do we have any questions of the officers? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just bring my notes up. In response to the questions in the points in the report, just wondering if officers could respond, please. So can we get some comments on 3.1, the lease term, and the reasoning behind the lease term?
Is that Anthony Trail or Chris Carroll?
Through you, Mayor, Joanne McNeil here.
Yeah, go, Joes.
Thank you. I might answer and then Anthony might add anything else. But the reason behind the 3-year term is because the future of the whole site as part of Fisherman's Bend is uncertain, and so the 3-year term allows Council to work with its partners on the future of the whole site that can then provide more certainty to the club moving forward.
Councillor Pearl.
Just two more points that were brought up. 3.6, removal of fencing. Just wondering if officers can provide an update on that, please.
Is that Anthony Trail?
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor. There's two options available to Council. We've got a current proposal we've been talking about, and we've also received an alternate option from the club. They've been assessed. Essentially, they are both of equal value, and they both try to achieve the principle of opening up pitch 2 for broader community use and protect pitch 1 for the operations of their Premier League team. Officers have put both proposals in there, and both can be considered by Council. We've recommended the pitch 1 by the wider openings. The impact of that is it does close off the pitch 1 from a community perception when you're on pitch 2. The alternative before Council can consider is the gate option, which leaves the gate or the fence between pitch 2 and pitch 1 more open and accessible when the community are in that zone.
Councillor Hurl.
Thanks for the comprehensive answer there. I appreciate that. 4.5, the additional $18,000 extra fund for pitch 1. Could officers provide some more detail about the rationale of that, please?
Through you, Mayor, I might start again and then pass over to Mr. Trail.
Yes, please.
So the current lease that is in place that's ending for the club, the agreement was that above normal or basic service levels for the ground would sit with the club. Now that has again been put into this lease, so it's carried over. even though it was agreed, it wasn't actually implemented in the last lease. So we're endeavouring to implement what the intention was in the previous lease into this lease.
Councillor Pearl?
So just to confirm, this section 4.5 is not a change to their current arrangements. From a contractual point of view, how did we not, how did ratepayers end up paying for something under a lease agreement in the past that we shouldn't necessarily have been contractually obliged to do?
Through you, Mayor, the agreement was made at the start of the lease, but it wasn't implemented, and so that is something that has been identified by officers, and we now are looking to make sure that it's clear in the next lease and that it is implemented and is very clear moving forward. And so we are also looking at the processes that we need to put in place to make sure this type of oversight doesn't happen in future.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. No further questions.
I have a quick question. In reference to, obviously, we're very excited that Australia and New Zealand are hosting the Women's World Soccer Cup. Given that the lease is just for 3 years, there is no intent to move the club on. It is just in order for us to plan better. Is that's the understanding? Because we would hate to miss the opportunity for to host some of the training for the World Cup.
Mr. Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Council has jointly worked with the club about the opportunity, so Council and the club would both be supportive of the Women's World Cup using Port Melbourne as a training base. It has previously been used for the Asian Cup, which was hosted by Australia 3-4 years ago. There is an opportunity through this World Cup that infrastructure upgrades might come from the governing bodies regarding that. That is unknown exactly the quantum at this stage, but something that may come to fruition over the next sort of 12 months, and any sort of arrangements can be considered in the future lease conversations.
Can I follow up with a further question then? So we as a council are looking to work with the club to ensure those opportunities are seized and take place, and that this shorter lease is not an intent to make it harder for them. So we are open to working to ensure that they can take up that opportunity.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the ground has already been identified as a potential host, which the club and council were aware of, and our role will be to help host them at alternate venues, but the club is very supportive of that opportunity, and so is council.
Councillor Pearl, did you have another question?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I should have brought this up before. It was mentioned in one of the meetings with the club that the capacity for the ground, usage capacity, particularly for pitch 1, is 24 hours a week. Firstly, is that an accurate representation of the appropriate usage of the field? And is there any way we can increase, achieve the impossible and increase the potential yield on field 1 and field 2, where it can be used for more hours or different times of the years, etc.?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, the rule of thumb for a good quality ground is a ground can cater for 20 to 25 hours of competition. That excludes broader community access. You can improve capacity, which we are doing at some of our other ground upgrades that Council has been doing in recent years, where if you improve the soil profile, you can increase that to a 25 to 30 year. The only other way to increase competition is to install synthetics where they have a useful life of approximately 10 years, but you can have unlimited programming on those particular spaces.
Are there any other questions? Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation or an alternative motion? Councillor Martin for an alternative motion?
Yes, please. Move an alternative motion, which we'll see up there.
Is that...
So you can see I've made some alterations to the original motion in the section which talks about the removal of fencing. Basically, the intent of the original motion was to remove the fence between pitch 2 and pitch 3 and install a new fence between pitch 1 and pitch 2 for the same price or possibly less. We can leave, we don't need to put a fence next to pitch 1. We can leave the existing short fence along the fence dividing pitch 2 and pitch 3. The proposal is to install 2 large gates, one on either side of the goals, leaving the fencing behind the goals. Those gates would be locked 2 hours before the start of any match for which spectators were to pay, and they would be opened again an hour after that game. So the intent is simply to change the original motion to alter what was happening with the fencing between pitch 2 and pitch 3.
Do I have a seconder for this alternative motion? Councillor Bond. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Martin?
In the initial discussions we've had with the council office, I think we've been relatively clear about the term of the lease, the funding involved with the lease, the maintenance of the pitch, and as I say, the only change to the documentation that's been published is the alteration to the fencing. That allows the club to meet its NPL licence requirements so it can stage top-level football matches behind with paying spectators. It also leaves them a little bit more extra room for the younger children to play games during the football match. And it only takes, if they play 20 home games a year and the ground is locked up, or pitch 2 is locked up for 5 hours in the course of each game, we're only going to lose access to pitch 2 for 100 hours a year, which is not a bad effort.
Councillor Bond. Councillor Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In relation to a couple of points, I'd just like to bring some things up. The lease term has been designed to match the previous resolution whereby we're requesting council officers to go away and develop a master plan, is my word, but a plan for the area. So this council can consider some options and investment options around the long-term prospects of both the playing field and the pavilion. That's a good thing. The lease does end at a bit of a strange time, but the football club shouldn't view that as a means of saying, you know, we're going to kick you out mid-season, or it's not supportive of the bids for the Women's World Cup, etc. Quite the contrary. I know certainly the ward councillors and certainly myself are strongly supportive of the club seeking additional investment from particularly that source to support the efforts of the Women's World Cup. And I'm sure council officers will work with the club to ensure that they put their best foot forward, and potentially this council, with that master plan or the planning process that's ongoing, may be able to magnify those funds that could become available with either state government funds, federal government grants, or even council resources themselves, so we can get a better outcome. Then after that, I think it's, you know, it provides us sufficient time. You've got to keep in mind this is a volunteer organisation. To negotiate a long-term lease is a complex thing for any organisation to do, and this provides us enough time and the club enough time to get the balance right between having enough certainty to continue operations and enough breathing time to make sure that the next time the lease comes around, it's fair and equitable for the club, provides them enough certainty to move forward with confidence, but also get a fantastic outcome for the community for what should be a multi-use site. Particularly the pavilion takes up a very large amount of space, and given the future population coming through in Fisherman's Bend, that has to be a multi-use site. The soccer pitches also need some work by the looks of them, and also I don't see a situation where we ever be using those soccer pitches in the short term anyway, or the medium term, for anything other than soccer. So please, to the club, don't think that this council doesn't support you. I've said previously that I think we're probably the largest supporter of the club from a financial point of view, and this group of councillors, I'm sure tonight will show their support by voting for this amendment which Councillor Martin's put up, which I think is perfectly reasonable around the fences. It gets a good outcome, and the club's come a long way in the past 3 or 4 months. Well, longer than that actually. Where are we? God, it's December, isn't it? So yeah, 7, 8 months ago, in terms of throwing the gates open to the public and making sure, putting their best foot forward to say this is a public asset and the public is welcome in our area. And that's a very different response to 5 or 6 years ago. So some water's gone under the bridge, that's true, but now this lease sets the settings to build trust between council, councillors, the football club, and most importantly, the community. So wholeheartedly support the parameters in this motion here this evening, and thank Councillor Martin for putting the amendment up.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will just foreshadow, if this motion should fail, I will move the officer's original recommendation. Councillor Martin, did you want to close? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those, that's passed unanimously. Let's move along to item 14.4, which is the informal meeting assemblies of councils. Do you have any questions for the officers? Councillor Pearl to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter. Councillor Pearl, do you want to speak to it? Councillor Baxter, do you want to speak to it? Does anyone else want to speak to the item? Do you want to close, Councillor Pearl? Let's take it to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Item 14.5, which is the status of council decisions and questions taken on notice, recorded by council from the 1st of July to the 24th of October 2020. Do we have any questions of the officers? Do we have a mover? Councillor Copsey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bond. Councillor Copsey, do you want to? Councillor Bond. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? Would you like to close, Councillor Copsey? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Item 14.6. This is the Council and Planning Committee meeting timetable for 2021. Are there any questions of the officers? I just want to... do I have a mover?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I do have a question.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter, sorry.
Sorry, just a quick question. I ask this every time, but we've double-checked that all of these dates incorporate things like religious holidays and stuff like that, you know, some councillors may not be able to attend. We've done that sort of check.
Kylie Bennett.
Through you, Mayor, I understand that that check has occurred.
Great. So, yep. So are there any other questions? I'll ask a quick question. If we have made an error, is there room, what would be the process of adjusting would we have to re-advertise or bring it to another meeting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the Chief Executive Officer, after consultation with the Mayor, in the case of an administrative matter or an emergency situation, can alter the date, time or location of a council meeting. So that's certainly able to be undertaken.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a mover? Councillor Copsey, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Did you want to speak to it? Councillor Copsey, did you want to speak? Councillor Baxter. Councillor Pearl, was that... No, that was a maybe I'll move it. Anyone want to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Councillors, we are looking at 14.7, which is the draft community engagement policy, the endorsement of draft policy for consultation. Do we have any questions of the officers? Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Copsey. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Baxter? Councillor Copsey.
This is actually a really important policy, so I will just speak to it briefly and note that it's going out for engagement, and being the draft community engagement policy, we really love our community to engage and give us your feedback on it. Under the Local Government Act 2020, there have been substantial changes to the requirements for council to demonstrate deliberative practices. Some of that step forward is reflected in this community engagement policy. It is as drafted, a policy that enables council to pick topics that might be suitable for a deeper sort of deliberative engagement. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen on every topic or every time, but there is the ability within this. I think one of the things that I'm always struck by and really value about being a representative of this community is that we really do hear from people in Port Phillip, and actually it's a remarkably engaged and passionate municipality in terms of people speaking to us, sharing their hopes and wishes for things that we can improve in the city. So I hope that this policy will put us in good stead to continue that practice and continue to improve the way that we engage with our community. But let us know what you think, please. It is a quick engagement period on this one so that we can comply with the need to have an interim policy by March next year, believe it is. So please have a quick look at this one. I presume it'll be up on Have Your Say shortly, and you can give us your feedback. Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Item 14.8, which is the appointment of members to advisory committees. Do we have any questions of the officers? No. So do we have a mover for this recommendation or an alt rec? Councillor Copsey. Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, but also just a request, because this wouldn't have been put up on the website, can we get it up on the... There we go.
Yep. So we'll talk through the...
So I believe we need to insert the names of the two councillors who are going to serve as the representatives on the South Melbourne Market Committee. So the first one is Councillor Consolo. And then at the next section, Councillor Pearl. I don't think so.
I might just seek advice. Kirsty, do we need to adjust one other? It might be on the attachment. We have to adjust a name. Oh no, we don't have to adjust that name anymore, do we? No, don't worry. Sorry, I'm in an earlier conversation. So, Councillor Baxter, are you okay to second that alt-rec? Councillor Copsey, did you want to speak to it?
What are we doing here? In addition to the work that we do here in the chamber and in briefings and in all of our readings and our correspondence, some brave councillors put up their hand to do some extra work as part of our advisory committees and also functions like consideration of grant recipients. There are a range of committees that councillors have put their hand up for. I just wanted to note that it does take extra time to serve on these committees, and there's a huge range of topics that are covered. So thank you to all the councillors who have taken on an extra appointment. We've shared out the work, I hope, quite fairly between us, and good luck in your delegated roles.
Councillor Baxter.
No, Councillor Copsey covered it all. I did just want to point out, though, that apart from the two names we've put up here, I don't think any members of the public are actually able to see all of the appointments we're making to the other committees. So is that something that can be shown, or do we...
Is it on the website?
Through you, Mayor, I believe it is. I just went to the website and was able to view it. So
it is on the website. Okay.
I'll just double check for you, though, like Councillor Baxter.
Because everyone's dying to know which committees we're on. Sorry.
Just for transparency.
All right. Here we go. We have... Sorry? So have I voted on this? Yes. Have I voted? Have I voted? I just had a moment.
I just found it, but...
Sorry?
It is on the website, I'm pretty sure.
It is on the website? Yes, it is on the website.
No, I don't think you voted, have you?
Did
you vote, Kirsty?
Oh, no, I know where I'm at. It's all right. It's getting late, folks. It's getting late. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Is that right? Andrew's looking at me with eyes. All right. Councillor Copsey, did you want to close? Let's put that to the vote before I totally lose it. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. 15 is notice of motion. Councillors,
Thank goodness we have no notices of motion tonight. 16 reports by councillor delegates. Councillors, as we've just declared who are the delegates, we obviously have no reports yet to give. So 17, we're moving to urgent business. Councillors, we have 3 items of urgent business. One of these items is an urgent motion raised by councillor Bond, and 2 items are property matters that will need to be considered in confidential. Councillor Bond, would you like to advise what your item is so that we may consider on a vote on whether this will be accepted as an urgent item?
Do you want me to read out the motion or talk to the motion?
Please.
I'll read out the motion, and my item of urgent business is that Council request officers to report back to Council in February 2021 on the street and beach service review, plus outlining the options required to continue pressure washing services permanently, including any additional budget requirements.
Could you tell us why it is an urgent matter?
I'm getting lots of feedback and making lots of observations at the moment that our streets cleaning, particularly around the 2 shopping strips that I walk every morning, Ackland Street and Fitzroy Street, the service could be improved, and I get feedback from the traders that there's many areas of our current cleaning regime that's not up to what they would see as the required standard. So I realise our next opportunity to bring this to us won't be until February. So I would like, by the time we come back in February, for some information on council, from council officers on ways that our current street and beach cleaning service is effective and suggestions on ways it can be improved from the current level of cleaning of our streets. And I'm presuming it's not just Ackland Street and Fitzroy Street. I presume they're likely to be the same service deficiencies in other streets across our organisation. So given it's going to be 2 months before we could do this, I'd rather do this tonight and have that information fresh, ready for us by the time we get back in the new year, and that any service improvements could potentially happen over the summer holidays, which is our busiest time in St Kilda, but certainly we'll be able to kick off in February when this comes back to us at the first meeting in February 2021.
Do I have a mover to accept this as an item of urgent business? Councillor Martin, do I have a seconder to accept this as Councillor Sirikoff? I will now put that motion. All those in favour to making this an urgent item of business? That has passed, so the motion is carried. We will now consider this item. Councillor Bond, would you like to move this motion?
I'd like to
hang
move...
on, I need to get a seconder, but you want to move your own motion?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Yep.
That Council request officers to report back to Council in February 2021 on the street and beach service review, plus outlining the options required to continue pressure washing services permanently, including any additional budget requirements.
And do I have a seconder for this, Councillor Pearl? Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I suppose I already did. But just to reiterate that I think there's opportunities for us to improve the current service level on our streets, particularly Ackland Street and Fitzroy Street, but I'm sure it applies equally to other streets across the municipality. I know in the last lot of budget decisions we removed the pressure washing service that was operating across the city. I guess it's the night for mea culpas, Councillor Pearl. We probably got that decision wrong. It's certainly a service that we need to have on our streets in order to complement the other street cleaning services that are currently programmed to occur in each of those streets. So this is just requesting officers come back to us in February with a report outlining how we can improve these particular services, and I'll leave it at that because I'm testing fate.
Councillor Pearl.
Happy to support. It's the last meeting for the year, so normally you'd do this under a notice of motion, but happy to provide Councillor Bond leave effectively to bring this as a... Traditionally you wouldn't put this as an item of urgent business, but given it's the last meeting of the year, it's completely acceptable. One thing I would say is that maybe it's because I spent 6 months, as we all did, pretty much in the city without leaving it. But just the volume of litter at the moment in the city, in every street in the city, let alone the foreshore and the piers, is just anecdotally it seems to have exploded, and just the volume of waste pretty much everywhere on our streets means we have to do something differently to solve this problem and think differently. So I'm excited and looking forward to getting this report in to see if there's some measures in here that can improve the situation, and if there's further investment required, then this council should consider it, because this is core business and it's a core priority, and all 9 of us would agree that nobody wants litter, waste, environmental damage it causes, and the sheer grubbiness of the city is a problem, and hopefully this goes some way to fix it. So well done, Councillor Bond.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond?
No, thanks.
I will now put the motion. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Now, we have 2 confidential property items to be considered as urgent business, and given that we must also discuss the reason of urgency for these items before they be considered. So I seek a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public and I'll take that in a sec, in order to deal with the 2 urgent business matters, and note that the minutes will reflect the reasons that these items not be considered in the public meeting. Thank you. Councillor Bond has moved. Do I have a second? Councillor Pearl. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? That motion is carried. So I advise the members of the public, as there are no further open items to be discussed, I'm sure you're glad that this is the conclusion of the public meeting. Thank you very much for your patience in joining us tonight.